Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of I Got Gameplay. Yes, I'm Michael Burhan. This is episode 45 and today we've got a very controversial topic in a sense because Miguel Leon is actually going to be talking and running through with us about gaming franchises that should have died a long time ago. Yes, these franchises that should have actually taken aim and had a bullet put through their head. But before I would do that, let me introduce you to the co-host of today's show. The man taking the lead on our subject is Mr. Miguel Leon. He is the 90s kid, fanboysanonymous.com, and also a writer in This Job for Hire. So Miguel, how are you today?
I'm currently halfway through dinner right now, and I just want to go out there on the air and just say that I'm not going to completely dump on these franchises. I just think there are some franchises, well, a lot of franchises, that I think, for lack of a better term, have jumped the shark. You know, they've just, we'll get into it more, but it's not gonna be all doom and gloom tonight, is what I'm trying to say.
Awesome. And we have today with us a gentleman who basically has his own show on YouTube, the Rose-Colored Reviews. He recently did a review of the Red Dwarfs franchise, actually a pretty good one at that. And he's very stylish because he wears the tie-dye and the overcoat and the glasses. Here's Mr. Travis Goss. Hello, Travis. How are you doing today?
Very well, Michael. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm pretty good, playing GTA Online. When it's finally kind of working, because at the moment the cloud server's down. It won't let me do anything apart from run through, rob stores, and steal cars. So yeah, it's pretty good. Enjoying myself. I was playing with Mr. Brandon Ligon, who's another member of the IGG army, who's currently trying to get through the game as we speak.
I thought he was currently trying to clean up a dead hooker.
That as well. And you can catch more Brandon on This Job for Hire, of course, guys, but we can always do to the plugs later on. So now, as we have both of the co-hosts here on the show today. We were supposed to have Mr. Lee Garrisich. I don't know what happened. He's probably dealing with something at the moment, so hopefully we'll get a hold of him later on. But for now, let's go to the news. Yes! Miguel, what's in the news this week?
Well, I guess since you already kind of segued into it, we might as well talk about the launch of GTA Online, which is the new big online frenzy that everybody seems to be going for. And as you pointed out before, there's been issues with it. You know, latency issues, slow down, things here and there. I'm kind of just spitballing because I haven't played GTA Online, but you might want to go in a little bit more in depth on it.
Yeah, GTA Online is pretty much similar to the Grand Theft Auto 5 game. You know, very, very similar in a sense, but you play a rather generic character. You get to do loads of missions. You can hold up liquor stores. You can do whatever you can to make money. You've got crews. You've got teams that you're playing with, and you can also play missions on your own. I'm currently playing as a woman for some weird reason. Going through a couple of... and I got killed by some generic guy who stole my car. Lovely. While I was talking.
It's the first ever I Got Gameplay Let's Play.
Yes. But hopefully, guys, I'm going to look at getting a new capture card and figure out ways to get this footage out to you guys, because at the moment, it's a great game. It's an extremely great game. It's extremely buggy as well at the same time. They were supposed to put fixes in to help us go through the tutorial session and save the games itself. Half the time, I cannot get onto a server, which does my head in. But apart from that, it's pretty good. And I'm not going to crap all over the franchise because it's it's not something that needs crapping over, if that makes sense. It's something that is extremely viable. It plays really well. It's a solid game. But I would really like to see it work and see more new content placed onto the online server. I would like more integration in terms of crews. I know a lot of people who, like, for instance, Angry Joe, have been able to play through with his crews and stuff. I haven't been able to get through with the IGG crew at all, which does my head in a little bit because I've been setting this crew up. I don't know if this is just basically the Xbox 360 that's having this issue, but I've heard loads of other issues and glitches via the PSN network as well. So guys, all I can say is if you're suffering, bear with it, and let's see how far we can take this.
Yeah, that tends to be the case when it comes to PlayStation Online. They just, and I don't like to dump on the PSN because I think there's some good things about the PSN, but they tend to have, they tend to not, it's not as well put together as Xbox Live. But then again, Xbox Live dates back to like the Xbox era. So I give them a little bit of a pass, but not too much, because I do think that by then, this type of stuff should be ironed out a little bit better.
No, I agree, because Xbox Live is actually a multiplayer facility. It's built for this, you know. It's whereas PSN, in a sense, it doesn't have. It's not functioning to that perspective. It does have its own multiplayer facility, but not to the lengths of Xbox Live.
Well, yeah, I mean, before that, with the PS2's online was basically just a dumb pipe. You know, it was basically just there to connect people together. You didn't have a network, per se.
Come back here, you asshole.
I will say this, I do find it interesting that a lot of people out there are saying, oh my god, this is so advanced, you know, we've never seen anything like this. Meanwhile, there's the game APB, which has been out on the market on the PC for since 2008, and it's basically the same thing.
Come on, then, you want to fire at me?
In fact, I'm thinking the developers might want to try to see if they can negotiate some type of PSN or Xbox Live game, like maybe get that game out there on the network, because I think that game's a free to play. So I think a game like that could really take advantage of a lot of the fervor built up by GTA Online.
What game's that?
That's just me. APB Reloaded. It's on Steam. It's a multiplayer gang warfare kind of thing where you play as gang, you play as a member of a gang, or you can play as a member of the cops, and you can do missions, and it's an open world, and it's built a lot like GTA Online, though not as advanced, because this was back in 2008 when it came out.
Oh, okay.
I believe the original developer was actually one of the original teams that came up with GTA, the original one. I think that was one of the big selling points that they were going with.
Ah. That actually sounds kind of handy. The one thing I will say about this game is it takes the frustration out extremely well. I have to admit, I've got kind of this sadistic side going on at the moment, where I'm randomly going around killing people and shooting store clerks in the head after I rob them blindly, and, you know, put my mic on with me screaming at them, telling them to take the money out of the till. It's a great experience, and I will say as well, we do get our share of kids online for some weird reason, even though this game's not built for them. But, you know, we do have them. And for all you people who've bought your children one of these games, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Because seriously, the content, right? Waterboarding, you can actually drown and torture people in this game. Do you really want to subject a child at the age of 12 to torturing people? Really?
Well, keep this in mind, Burhan. I mean, it's going to be like this no matter when a new GTA game comes out, and that's a given. And I definitely agree. You don't give a game like that to children, especially 12-year-olds. And that's such an impressionable age. I mean, any child underneath the age of 16 is considered impressionable.
Yes.
But with that being said, I totally agree. I mean, whoever's buying these games, because, I mean, I wouldn't say call social services, but that's not a bad idea when you think about it.
Well,
but on the other side, I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate as well.
The thing is, though, I've also talked to Miguel about this beforehand. I was online recently, and I had a little 12-year-old, and I'm going to say punk, because he was a punk, online, sitting there trash-talking me while I'm playing the game. He was on the same server as me, so we were connected by the headset. So I'm sitting there playing the game, like, screaming at the store clerk, and he was like, you sound like you're from London. I was like, yes, I am from London. Hey, is it true all you Brits are stupid? And then it just went into a whole tirade of, you don't know where I live. I'll give you my address to where I live, and we'll come dance, son. And he's from Texas. It was really, really that bad. So I ended up basically talking to him. He was trash talking me. I trash talked back, and then I realised to myself, why am I doing this with this little social inept human being? And he was talking about the fact that he'll waste me and all this and that rubbish. And it was just a baby. It was literally a baby trying to talk like he was an adult, and it was really sad, to the point where I literally had my fill of this person, to the extent where, okay, someone's paused their game, so I'm just going to kill that person right now.
There you go.
Oh, crap, I've got police running after me. But yeah, this little kid was sitting there slagging me off. I, gave him his comeuppance as well at the same time. And it got on my nerves. And it got to the point where I said to him, look, do you even understand what this game is? Do you even understand what you're doing? I kind of joshed him a little bit about the fact that America's in dire straits because of the government. Even though he goes, we got free speech. I was like, really? Does your free speech also entail the fact that the American government are basically shutting down all their services because two parties can't agree? There you go. And he kind of got confused. But that helps the situation. It doesn't help matters where these kids are playing these games. These games are included for adults, and then you have every politician sitting there talking about the fact that this game is bad for people, and, kids out there are apparently suffering and succumbing to this, and then it causes people to shoot each other in the head and etc. And it's just a bad thing, in my opinion. And in a sense, it needs to stop. And the best way is to legislate the damn game, and they're not going to do that, and that's the problem. You can't legislate the game properly because of the fact that you're going out there and you're allowing people to buy it. Now, this is not legislated in the same way as cigarettes and booze, whereas if someone who's a minor buys those, the person who purchased it for them, who's the proxy, will be prosecuted for it. Anyone can buy these games. I can literally go into a store, if a kid wants a game, I can buy for him, no questions asked. And, I'm a parent myself. I've got me here today. They're all sleeping. My nephew asked me if he could play this game, and I told him no. Simple as. It's basically using on this parent as a big brother or anybody really, someone who with a sense of understanding that this is not for children. Not at all.
And that's very true. And I was also going to say I was going to play devil's advocate with this topic because I come from a generation where at the age of 6, because my brother and I wanted to see this movie, I saw RoboCop when it first came out. And yes, it was an R-rated film. I think it was R-rated, wasn't it? R-rated back?
Yeah, that was definitely R-rated.
Okay, just wanted to double check. But we were both, he was of age, so he was able to take me to it, and he really wanted to see it. I was like, I want to see this too, because, hey, I'm with my brother, But, and the thing is, at the same token, since I've seen that movie, I was also taught right from wrong, fiction and fact, and all that stuff. And all I'm going to say is, if these parents, as stupid as they are, letting their kids play this game, they had just better make sure that they understand what's right, what's wrong, what's fiction, what's fact, and just sit down and talk to them. If they must play this game, just talk to them about it and tell them what they can and can't do.
But that's the problem. How are you supposed to explain to them about shooting a hooker in the head with your AK-47? It's not the kind of thing...
That shouldn't even be something necessary to explain.
Or how... What about...
That's just kind of common sense.
What about the various... like situations that you end up in, like torturing people and stuff like that? How are you going to explain that to a child?
Those people just don't have any sort of inner conscience. I mean, I've always been under the impression that we all know what's right and wrong. We all know it deep down inside. We might not be able to speak it, but we feel it. But then there's that top layer of whether or not we care. And some people just naturally have less of a care for it. Some people have more of it. You know, you can blame it on society. You can blame it on just happening to be. I mean, some people are just thick to that, and some people are thin to it. I mean, video games, I don't think really have that much of an effect on somebody. If somebody's that damaged to where playing a game of GTA 3 is going to cause them to go out and murder somebody, they were pretty much off the deep end to begin with.
Yeah, but again, it's about balance. With kids, truthfully, if someone's... I always believe in the same context of someone starts out in the world innocent. And it's life itself, it's the people around you, it's your surroundings, your environment, that make you who you are. And that's the problem.
Travis, do you have children?
I do. I have a son, but he lives with his mom in Arkansas.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to get into this argument, and the only reason I'm not going to is because I have a very different perspective. I mean, you guys have kids. The perspective changes, I think, when kids come into it, especially when you have your own. So I'm going to probably have a lot of stuff that goes against what you guys think, but then again, that's because you guys just have a way different perspective when it comes to the way you guys see the world. So I'm not going to say it's better or worse than how I see it. It's just different.
I got my comeuppance. The guy I shot in the car while his game was paused decided to bomb me.
Karma.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, Miguel. If you really want to go ahead and express your feelings, I mean, go ahead. I mean, it's not going to hurt my feelings at all, what you think. Nor
mine. At the end of the day, perspectives are there. I believe that what makes each individual very unique is a difference of opinion. You know, whether your opinion is right, whether your opinion is wrong, or whether you're Brian Gibson from the Days Man Show, who thinks everybody's wrong but him. Hi, Gibby. So yeah, go for it, because in the end, we can agree to disagree, but why don't we put this perspective out there, this comparison, so to speak?
Alright, well, I'm not the type of person that thinks that video games need to be censored. I think a lot of people do just for the sake of marketability. You know, in this day and age, you really can't get away with marketing a game that's adults only. Most consoles won't carry that, as Manhunt 2 learned the hard way. I do think there are some games that need to know how to take their content and do it tastefully. I do think that's the big problem, is that there's a level of taste that needs to be balanced out. Mm-hmm. You know, something like GTA I don't think goes too far in terms of taste. I think there are moments where it still stays within the line of, okay, that's not as far as you could take it. You know, at least with ones nowadays. I know a lot of people had that issue with Vice City and San Andreas, but I think the series, just to use an example, really knows how to do over the top within boundaries. A game like Postal 2, however, that's a game that I think is one we need to watch out for, and one that really does need to have kind of the bolts, you know, screwed onto them, for lack of better terms. You know, that's one that I think goes too far for no apparent reason. I don't think that it's a matter of having to censor all games or having to, you know, put legislation on all of them. I do think it's a matter of being smart and a matter of just... I think it's a case-by-case situation. I think that my parents let me play M-rated games, and I didn't turn out too different, you know, by comparison. Shut up, Burhan.
The thing
I heard you snicker under there. I'm like...
The thing that I'm wondering, though, is did your parents know what you were playing?
I think they had a feeling about what it is. My mother didn't. I think she kind of just knew that I was smart enough to know right from wrong. And my old man was kind of, he knew too, but he knew the same thing. I think it's just a matter of parents trusting their inner instinct. And yeah, I do agree that there needs to be more.
Excuse that, that's my son just coughing. But yeah,
you know, I hate to kind of dwindle it to this type of sentiment, but I do think it's very much the responsibility of the parents to be smart about it. I'm not going to say that however you guys wish to, whatever games you guys let your kids play or not, that's you guys' concern, that's you guys' business. I'm not going to get into it. But in terms of having to do this blanket legislation, I think more bad is going to come out of it than good.
I don't think a blanket legislation needs to be put in tail. I think enforcement needs to be made. Kids at that age should not be buying games such as GTA 5.
Okay.
If a game says it's not, it's rated mature and it explains every single little bit like GTA has done, it's explained every bit of content that it has, kids should not be playing it. And that's the problem, I think. Too many people, it's not the fact that kids are playing it per se, but too many people tend to blame this type of media for their own insecurities. Oh, I gunned someone down, that's because I played GTA.
And that's what my big problem with a lot of the discussion about censorship is. It's a very blaming argument. I do think that there are a lot of people who put too much power into what video games can turn somebody into. I really do. I think the connection that people make is a huge stretch. And
but the same goes for movies and stuff as well. If you look at Dexter, for instance, that was mirrored in controversy because of the fact that some dude who was writing a screenplay similar to Dexter went out and wanted to feel, he wanted to know how it felt to kill someone.
Yeah, that sounds like that guy was already, three shakes to the wind.
No, but that's the thing. The material itself got the blame. Nobody wants to hear the story about the guy who goes around killing people. They want to know if it was because that he played a game or he watched a movie.
It goes back to what you say about the theory that people are born innocent. It's hard for people to think that somebody can just be bad. That something. It has to be some type of outer force that mutates people into doing something bad. And honestly, I just think some people are just, they're just have it in them.
No, I agree with you. And the problem is, though, we have to make sure that, in our sense, we do what. And as I said, I never felt this way until I became a parent, and a lot of it is what I started viewing and what I started seeing my children view. It's like there's certain music videos, for instance, where someone's shaking it, like what their mother gave them, so to speak. And my kids are watching that. And
to be fair, you guys do allow unrated videos. We clamp down on our videos here in America.
And that's the thing. We got unrated videos and stuff like here. And what I make sure is that they don't watch that sort of thing. I can't control it when their mother's with them because I basically, if she's done something or said something or allowed them to watch certain bits of content, I will then find out afterwards. And once I find out, then I have words with her about it and make sure it doesn't happen again. I feel very strongly when it comes to my kids and what they watch because I want them to understand things. And that's the whole thing here. My kids aren't adults. I don't want them to understand adult surroundings. I want them to be children. I don't need my daughter to grow up to understanding that there's financial problems and, that certain countries, people can't pay rent and stuff like that, or people get thrown out on the street because of dodgy government officials. That's not her place. She doesn't need to know that. What she needs to know about is being a kid and playing and imagining and, doing whatever she feels that she wants to do as a child and enjoying herself, not stressing out about the world's problems or getting upset because some guy's been, she finds out that a lot of stuff that's going on in terms of social commentary is real. It doesn't need to happen. And that's the problem. A lot that And as I said, there's a lot of bad parents out there who don't give a crap, who will throw their kids these types of games and say, without any explanation, no rhyme, no reason, who will go like, well, here you go, and allow like little Timmy to actually play something like this, which I have a huge issue with, because I feel that those types of parents aren't really that great of a parent to begin with. And, you know, they end up screwing their kids' lives up because of stuff like this, because they're not ready for stuff like this. And you have to understand, you know, you've got to understand from your children's perspective, if they truly are ready for something like this at such a young age.
Well, I'll say this. I think this is definitely a good catalyst for a censorship that's by game. I've already spent a whole half on news story. I think we should maybe head
let's keep on with the news stories, and what's next on the list?
Well, we kind of spent a lot of time on that one, so I don't know how much you want to spend on these, but the Half-Life trademark, what happened was someone filed trademark for both Half-Life 3 and Portal 3 in the EU, European Union, and apparently it was a hoax. It was not somebody related to Valve. Valve has gone on record as saying that Half-Life, well, not so much Half-Life 3, but specifically Portal 3 is not in development right now. They don't have anything planned in terms of Portal 3. Even if they did, they wouldn't say so. But whoever filed the claims in the EU were not affiliated with Half-Life, with Valve at all. I don't know if this was just some guy just trolling the Valve or trying to get their name out there, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of wrong. I mean, in the days where you can trademark and patent anything, seemingly, for somebody to go out there and do the patent and to patent and trademark the name Half-Life 3, knowing how big that's going to be, I think it's kind of scumbaggy. I'm glad that they pulled the reins on it.
Yeah, but in a sense, were they allowed to?
I don't think so. Keep in mind, there's a lot. I don't know how stringent they are when it comes to patents in the EU, but in America, you can pretty much patent anything. I mean, they're very lenient when it comes to patents over here. I don't know how it is in the EU.
I think it's pretty much the same over here as well, to the truth.
I'm guessing whoever filed the patent realized it was bogus, so they contacted Valve to make sure, and have Valve that their company patented, and they pulled the trademark, which is good. I don't think we need a legal battle between Valve and some random guy who thought it was a good idea to patent the name Half-Life.
I think it's dependent on what the person thought they would gain out of it.
Well, that's usually it's trolling. It's patent trolling.
Yeah.
What you do is you patent something that it's either or maybe something very generic, and you wait for somebody else to develop it, and then you sue them. I mean, that's going on, especially huge nowadays with like cell phone patents and stuff within the tech industry. A lot of people have been doing that lately. They'll just patent something really generic, like a name or a symbol or something, or some type of generic bit of technology. They'll wait for a big company to do it, and then they'll swoop in and demand not so much a small amount, but something that is small enough to where they can just pay it off to go away. You know, it's patent trolling. It's rent seeking.
Yeah, of course. So Travis, what about yourself? Do you have any comments on this, or do you think that they were in the right to do that, or in the wrong? Well, they probably were in the total wrong about this.
That's silly. That's a silly thing, because I mean, I can see what that person was trying to do. I mean, because at some point or another, Valve is going to come up with a Half-Life 3 at some point in the future. So what they were trying to do, just a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. But kind of did. Travis, do you have any news for us?
Yes. Actually covered the big stories this week, but I came across this one. We all remember that whole debacle with SimCity when that came out earlier this year, right?
Online multiplayer issues and the constant online connectivity with EA.
Yep. Well, it looks like that SimCity developers potential offline mode here sometime. EA Max today that is exploring adding a long requested offline mode to its city building strategy city. Cool. Right now we have a team specifically focused on exploring the possibility of offline mode from Maxis Emeryville's general manager Patrick Buckner, whatever. Sorry for the mispronunciation. I can't make any promises on what we will have more information, but we know this is something that many of our players have been asking for.
Right. Just on that mark, we've got someone on the line by the name of Stin Kiaz.
Hey guys.
Caller, you on?
I just have a video game question about the new Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, go for it.
Do you guys eat nerds out of each other's assholes? That's my question.
Oh,
for
you're
Grand
a
Theft
troll!
Auto 5.
How are you?
What?
No.
You didn't answer the question. I asked you if you eat nerds out of each other's assholes, and you didn't answer me.
And you must have a free time on your hands. Goodbye, loser. Anyway, let's continue the conversation on Maxis.
Our audience, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, not necessarily. He's one of those guys who stay up all night waiting for a radio show to happen so he can call people on Skype and basically act like a total troll because he doesn't have a sex life.
Just keep in mind that brings up our totals, so it actually helps us in the long.
At least he listens to us. That's the main.
Yeah, you don't have to like us, but you have to listen to us.
Man, you gotta love us.
Yeah.
So yeah, going on the whole Maxis thing, it's a good thing that they're actually considering this. Whether or not they'll actually implement this is another story. What about you, Miguel? What do you think?
Well, I honestly couldn't hear half of what Travis was saying. You were going a little Transformer a little bit on that on my end, so can you kind of sum it up for me? Because like I said, I could barely hear the gist of what he was saying.
Well, what I was saying is Maxis has a team that they put together to possibly make SimCity an offline game.
Oh, all right. That I completely agree. You know, I'll give them credit for trying to go online. I think sooner or later most games are going to go cloud-based and online, but right now, especially in the U.S., we just don't have the infrastructure for it. You know, a lot of people that have computers that want to play SimCity games just don't have the internet to facilitate something like that. And to be honest, it seems like there were so many problems with the game saves and just bugs all over the place. And I'm kind of glad that they're giving us an offline alternative. I think it's going to be best in the long run for them because they're in development right now of The Sims 4, and they really don't want any bad vibes off of this leading into that. They want to kind of smush this while they have the chance.
Is that going to be completely online multiplayer as well? The Sims 4?
I haven't heard much about it. When I was doing research for this topic, I saw that they were in development of it. I don't know if they said it was all online or not. It wouldn't shock me if it is, but given the problems now, I don't think it's going to be the only way to play it, but I do expect some type of online multiplayer functions. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's in a sense we know that's going to happen because I don't feel that it's Maxis that's the problem here. I believe it's EA.
Oh, we'll talk about EA and things that they do to their developers soon enough when we get into the topic.
Yes, of course. So anything else you got for us there, Travis?
I couldn't really find anything. Oh, well, of course, this is kind of video game related. A couple days ago, we had the sad news of the passing of Tom Clancy.
Yeah, I was actually just about to mention that if you weren't. Yeah.
So yeah, no, he's. For those of you who haven't read any of Tom Clancy's books, you'd probably know him for the slew of games that have actually come out in his names. I think it was Splinter Cell was one of them, weren't they?
Yeah, Splinter Cell, Rainbow Six, Ghost Recon. Well, Ghost Recon's a offshoot of Rainbow Six, but I know there's a few others, but the two that pop into my head are Rainbow Six and Splinter Cell.
And he kind of brought more of a story-based genre to the whole FPS shooter, you know, and it's. I'm not saying he didn't have a story to begin with, but he added more layers to it, in my opinion.
I'll say this, to me, he brought a sense of realism.
Yes.
Very much to it, especially in the post 9/11 first-person shooter scene. I mean, his stories really were very much of the time. I mean, even though his stories stretch out to like the 80s and the early 90s with stuff like The Hunt for Red October and The Summer of All Fears, at that time when you had games like the Call of Duty Modern Warfare games, which is a little bit further down the line, but very much of the Rainbow Six games and whatnot, it very much brought a sense of realism that I don't think you had up until then.
I agree with you.
It made you feel like you were playing something, ripped right from the headlines.
Yeah, and in a sense as well, he kind of reinvented the genre. You know, and that's a very hard thing to do, actually, reinventing the wheel and giving it more depth.
I think, I'll say he gave a sense of legitimacy to the genre in a way. You know, I think he was one of the first big names to attach his name to a series of video games. I think really the only other person I can think of would probably be Clive Barker, but it's
but Clive Barker's very hit and miss.
Yeah, that's debatable. But Tom Clancy, I mean, that was very much a name that signified a high level of games. I mean, the Splinter Cell series, the Rainbow Six series, later on the Ghost Recon series. I can't think of a game in that series that has really slipped down in terms of quality.
And by the way, most of you guys, if you're wondering what I'm doing at the moment on GTA Online, I am literally going through a sewer duct. I ended up getting driven in here by the police, and I can't find my way out. So there you go.
Even GTA 5 has a sewer level.
Yeah, literally, I'm going through layers and layers of sewer ducts, and I don't know how to get out. So if anyone who's done it before, call in on 760-512-7247, or you can call like our friendly troll did by giving us a shout on Skype.
Or not.
Or not.
Or not. We could just keep going really nicely. We don't have to invite other people here. That seems to be very hit or miss tonight.
Well, that's fine. At the end of the day, I don't mind you guys trolling us, but do us a favour. Actually use something that's, say something that's going to make us laugh, because as far as I'm concerned, the whole eat nerd out of each other's ass didn't work for me. We've had funnier.
Yeah.
What was it? Anybody catch that guy's name? What was his name?
Nick?
It was Scaler Keys, but in a sense, though, I don't think that was his real Skype name. I think he made it. He actually put the effort in to make the fake name to come onto the show so he could ask that very silly question.
Well, I'll answer the silly question for him. I eat nerds, alright, but it's not from your guys' assholes, it's from his mom's. How about that? I you, motherfucker.
No mums were hurt at the making of this episode.
None.
But segueing off of that, let's also go into our next little bit of news, which I've got here. A Sony exec basically states, he was the Sony dev's relation boss, says that nobody gains from console exclusivity. What do you guys think of that? Do you think he's right? Do you think, console exclusivity is kind of snowballing people?
I think in this day and age, it's kind of it's pretty much died at this point. I mean, back in the PS2 Xbox days, that was pretty much what sold the console, was its exclusives. I think now that the console market has pretty much become very homogenized, I think you're seeing you saw a lot more franchises that probably would never have hit the rival consoles coming over there just out of necessity. It just really from a third party perspective, it's almost dead. You rarely see that. Really, the case is now second party and first party. It's either in-house or it's from developers that were purchased by the in-house. You don't see many third-party developers doing exclusives. It's just bad for business.
Yeah, and that's another thing as well. Looking at Capcom's recent financial loss, it was kind of head-scratching for them to do a Dead Rising game that was exclusive to the Xbox One.
And considering right now in such dire financial straits at this time, I really think they need to reconsider that and bring it out for the PS4. And I know I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe do like a Dead Rising compilation for the PS4 as well. You know, I mean, Capcom, you got to really start using your heads here.
Well, you got to also keep in mind cost to production. I mean, we don't know how much it's going to cost for them to make a game for the PS4. You know, that was a big issue when the PS3 came out, is a lot of developers wanted to bring their games over to the PS3 from the 360, and just, it was too expensive, it was too hard to do it, and a lot of developers just decided not to. It was just too much work, too much money to put into it. We don't know how that is when it comes to the PS4. I think it's easier now because I heard the PS4 is x86 based, which is basically the same construction that PC games have, so it's not too difficult, but we don't know. You know, we don't know how hard it is to port a game from the 360, from the Xbox One to the PS4, so it might just be a case of just early difficulties, you know. I'm sure sooner down the line, developers will even out like they did with the PS3, but I don't know. I can't really fault Capcom yet.
Yeah, I agree with you on that sense, but on another, why would they do that? Because I'm hearing at the moment that the development for PS4 games are kind of similar to what developing for the Xbox One. You know, they use the same sort of drives, the media, the content, apart from the fact that, you know, they had that whole cloud-based issue going on with the Xbox One. Now, by doing what they're doing, it makes no sense to me at all.
Well, we gotta wonder though. Do they have any sort of deal with Microsoft?
That's what I'm thinking. Microsoft could have actually financed the development of the game.
Well, there are timed delays, timed releases. Like Microsoft, on several occasions, has gone to developers and said, "Look, we'll sign you a deal. We'll pay you this amount of money. You maybe not cancel your version, because I think that might not be too legal, but you can delay the release maybe 3 months down the line, because that has happened before. You know, a game has come out for the 360 on a time delay and then come out like 3 or 4 months later for the PS3 just because they paid for it. You know, you can do that. That might just, we don't know. I don't know if they've announced that, but that could be a situation like that.
That could be as well, but the fact that they've managed to integrate it using Microsoft's other facilities as well shows that they actually are integrating it onto not only the Xbox One, but also on using like facilities such as Smart Glass. So if they do bring out a PS4 version, will they just tone it down and not give as much exclusive content as they have done for the Xbox One?
It might. I mean, I remember one of the games that I was anticipating for the PS3 when it launched was Marvel Ultimate Alliance. And I remember one of the things that annoyed me was that Microsoft paid to get exclusive downloadable characters for it that still to this day have not been ported over to the PS3. So, I mean, I haven't gotten the game because of it, but it's things like that that's irritating.
But in the end, do you think it damages the brand of, like, does it damage the developers, or is it more on the fact that it's something that doesn't need to happen?
It depends, because it depends on what you're porting your game to, because I've seen a lot of situations from developers where they said that making a port for the 360 to the PS3 is not that hard. Making a port from the 360 over to the Wii, that's more difficult, mostly because of Nintendo's stringent licensing policies, like the stuff that you're allowed to do, the stuff you have to do with them. So it depends on, it could be a blessing, you know, it could be easy for them, like, hey, we only have to develop one console, you know, using one type of dev kit, you know, if it's easier or not, we can probably knock this out real quick. From a developer standpoint, there's some positives to it. From a business standpoint, as I stated before, it really doesn't make too much sense. Not in this day and age, at least.
That's very, very true. So, Travis, have you got any opinion on this?
I can see why they have time exclusives. I remember at the one point, this goes back to GTA 4. For a while, Microsoft had exclusive rights to the expansion DLC, those 2 DLC episodes. And then it was like about a year later, they became available in the PS3. And, I can see why those kind of deals go on. I like to consider them under-the-table type deals. Like, hey, we'll give you more money if you have it on our system for this amount of time. I'm sure it kind of sucks, especially if you have the competitor system, because you have to wait a little while longer. But at the same time, it is business savvy.
Very, very true. Now, segueing off of that, guys, we're going to go from the news section on to today's topic. So, yes, today's topic, we have Mr. Miguel Leon, who will be discussing the points of franchises that should have died a long time ago. So let's get on it, Miguel, and I will pass the show on to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one I've been wanting to do for a while, because I think we can all say there's a lot of franchises we can name off the top of our heads that have probably not withstood the test of time, that have just jumped the shark in one way, shape, or another. But before we get into all that and the different facets of that, I just want to kind of go around the horn and just ask you guys a question. What, in your opinion, is the sign that a franchise has gone too long? That it's pretty much, it's not the franchise it used to be? Is it a case of sequelitis? Is it just not being able to keep up with the times? Is it just a matter of just different tastes, going from one age to another? We'll start with you, Burhan.
Variation. It's when a franchise attempts to be different but ends up failing miserably. In the case, you can actually go to the whole Sonic the Hedgehog reboot that they tried to do, where he ended up basically having the character face different situations. They added loads of new friends. They even gave him a female love interest who was human. It made no sense. It watered down the character. The game was broken. They tried to do something different with him, but they just weren't able to do so. But I will say they kind of did redeem themselves with the whole Sonic Generations thing. But we can talk about that as we go on. But I think that's the major issue here. It's when they try to make it like the new hot thing, but end up failing miserably.
Travis, what about you?
I just think that if the game starts feeling kind of stale, like it's like, I've done this before and all that, it doesn't seem as fresh as it once did. And also, I don't know if this is how anybody feels about this, but yearly releases, it's great to have a new game every year, but after a while, you get kind of tired of it.
Well, it depends, because I'm gonna just say right now, I think some franchises are okay with that, like sports franchises. Like,
oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna say the Madden franchise is a franchise that needs to die. I think it's the necessity of something like that. Same thing with the WWE franchise. I mean, there was a while where I started to think it was getting stale, but I was resigned to it because it's very much a necessity. Although I do think that a lot of games could probably learn from maybe just having an online system where the system just updates based on whatever changes to the roster or things like that. Maybe you don't need every single year, but I get why from a business perspective.
It's money, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I guess considering you brought up Sonic the Hedgehog, let's start off with the first topic, which is franchises that, in my opinion, couldn't move to the next generation. And I think Sonic's the perfect example. I mean, this is a franchise that was on top of the world seemingly back in the 16-bit era in the 2D side-scrolling movement. And I'll be honest, Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2 were not bad games. I thought Adventure was a lot better than it had any right to be, considering it was a launch title, and I think 2 really ironed out a lot of those problems. But some reason, man, Sonic just went off a cliff. I mean, you just look at a lot of those games, like Sonic Heroes, Sonic Race, well, not the Sonic Racing games. I mean, I can understand those. Like you said, the reboot that you mentioned, which was abysmal. The Werehog games.
Sonic Unleashed.
Sonic Unleashed. I will admit the slalom type games, the ones where you're just Sonic running down a track and you have to use the Wiimote, the Wii exclusive ones. Those I think were probably not as bad as the 3D ones, but I think to me Sonic is a franchise that's pretty much past its prime. And I think it kind of reminds me of like one of those 80s hair metal bands that just kind of stays, they tour around a little bit and maybe they'll record some stuff, but they're just not even on the blip, you know, they're just not there.
And then they'll charge you $1,000 for tickets.
Kinda. I mean, Sonic still puts out releases that are full priced.
Yeah, I'd probably consider that as the John Bon Jovi of the franchise in a sense. Because that's what they do. They will charge you extremely high amounts for nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's actually a perfect example because I'll still listen to Bon Jovi's 80s stuff, but man, I think after It's My Life, it's just,
Yeah, and the funny thing about that, if you listen to a song like It's My Life, it plays off Living on a Prayer very easily. You know, it retains some of what made Living on a Prayer work, and they try to update it, and it fails miserably. And it's the same with the Sonic franchise. They try to retain some of what makes it work, but fail because they try to add as many new mechanics as they can. Oh, you know, let's make Sonic more 3D, and let's have him go for more co-op. Overhead. Yeah, more overhead levels. Let's have co-op. Let's give him like 1 million different friends, so you know, there's loads of people he needs to save. And it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think Sonic's time has passed. I really do. Also, just from a perspective of just time, Sonic to me is just too 90s. And I love the 90s, don't get me wrong. 90s kid. But I think if there's one mascot that just feels dated, it's Sonic. Sonic it's just a very dated character. And I'm surprised that Sega, especially Sonic Team, hasn't tried to make new characters. I mean, they tried one with that Billy Hatcher game, but who was going to really warm up to a character in a chicken suit?
Yeah,
that was ahead of its time, really. Sounds great now, but no, not in the mid 2000s.
Of course, it's one of those things where it just doesn't have the mystique that it should have done. And the thing is, it's like trying to take a cheese that's been sitting in your fridge, a bit of mouldy cheese, and saying that it's it's a new breed. You know, it's like it aged over time. No, it's just mouldy fucking cheese. and in a sense, that's what Sonic became. It was more of Sega trying to attempt to revive the franchise, but kind of ripping away everything that made it great. It was a 2D platform, but it had very interesting kinks. Sonic was very fast, he was very quick, he could literally go from place to place very easily, and he had Robotnik, but it's like the whole, it suffered from, I call it kind of the Mario effect, in a sense, when you kept playing him against the same characters again and again and again and again. And they're like, let's bring a bit more story to it. Let's put him on Earth with real humans and not explain why.
Well, my favorite Sonic idea was, let's make a black Sonic and give him guns.
Yeah, that one as well. It was just like Shadow has a gun for some real reason, but I don't know why. And that was a kid's game. Like, yeah, go on, Shadow, put a cap in Robotnik's ass. It made no sense.
Travis, you got anything you want to add to this before we head to the next franchise?
Actually, I really don't, because you guys seem to have covered every angle from it. All I can say is, like, if I were to pick one specific Sonic game I fell in love with from, like, 16-bit era, what I think was, like, the pinnacle of the series, that has to be Sonic's TV.
Agreed. Although I will say this, I don't know if you guys have seen the unreleased footage of Sonic Extreme, that proposed 3D platformer that they were making for the Saturn before they scrapped it and did 3D Blast instead. That one actually could have been good. I've seen footage of it. It doesn't look terrible. It's got a neat little, in and out kind of graphic style where it looks like Sonic's going inside the world and then out again. Like, it seems like it did more with 3D than Sonic 3D Blast, which was abysmal.
Yeah, it's. I think the thing about Sega is they tend to shoot themselves in the foot, in a sense. They never actually look at things through an appropriate perspective. It's kind of like the Fantasy Star debacle.
What's up, Internet Wrestling community? This is Anthony Mango of SmarkOutMoment.com, a wrestling website dedicated to the smart marks like you and I. We break down and review every pay-per-view with predictions and spoilers, and you can catch our weekly podcast on YouTube for some smack talk. There's no rules here, and we show no mercy. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at SmarkOutMoment, where we analyze all the angles, shoot first, and kill kayfabe. That's www.smarkoutmoment.com. Why mark out when you can smark out?
If everyone knows that one, when they tried to make everyone take down footage of the old Fantasy Star games because I was making a new game, and it was just like, really?
Huh, I actually hadn't heard about that.
Yeah. But with them, it's they kept trying to bring something new and unique to something that really people were just happy with being the way it was. I loved when they incorporated Knuckles into the franchise because it was something new and interesting. And Knuckles was seen as the anti-hero. Then they were like, oh, let's do that again, but this time with a black hedgehog with a gun. And it didn't work. And the reason why it didn't work is because they're like, oh, people like Shadow. Yeah, we do like Shadow. We liked him as an antagonist. Then suddenly he turns good again. It's like, why are we going through this? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And there's no justification for it. It's like, oh, let's add a million more new characters with quirkiness and make it more like a children's cartoon. And I think people just got fed up with it. And I think in my opinion, the straw that broke the camel's back was the reboot.
Agreed.
Alright, and from there, and I'm going to start with Travis on this one, just because I think Travis, I don't like that Travis is just sitting in the corner, just kind of minding his own thing while we're kind of talking. I want him to be a part of this. The next franchise that I think is kind of didn't really move into the next generation as smoothly as it should have is the Prince of Persia series. I love the Prince of Persia series. I think the original trilogy, Sands of Time is one of the best games ever made. I love that game to death. I mean, I thought from a story perspective, it was well made. The dialogue was well made. The platforming was awesome. I even like the combat, and I know a lot of people who hated the combat in Sands of Time, but I really loved that whole dodge mechanic. The first three were really good, and then Ubisoft tried to reboot the franchise with this weird cel-shaded, I don't know what, and the fans kind of just rebelled against them, like, what are you doing? So they kind of had to scramble and release their apology in the form of Forgotten Sands. And I haven't heard much bad about Forgotten Sands. I've heard that the worst thing about it is that it very much feels like a cash-in. I haven't heard anything about Ubisoft going back to the Prince of Persia series. I think the Prince of Persia series has kind of hit its peak. I think they tried to do something new with it. The fans didn't want anything to it. I think I'm happy with the trilogy as is. I don't think we need to really do anything more with it. Maybe the next generation we could do something new with it, but I think for now the series is pretty much has hit it's not dead, but it's taking a long necessary hiatus.
You know what killed the series for me?
What?
The fucking movie.
See, I haven't seen the movie. Yeah, I haven't seen the movie. You know
really?
what? I want to see it. I'm a massive fan of the Prince of Persia series. I haven't seen it. I do want to watch it.
I was a massive fan of the Prince of Persia series until I saw the movie, which for me, the acting was atrocious. The thing is, like, they were trying to go for a whole Lawrence of Arabia RP type English. And
you mean very pulp. Very pulpy.
Yeah, and instead they turned it into an episode of EastEnders. For those people who don't know what an episode of EastEnders sounds like, it sounds like this most of the time. So it sounds like they were doing a Danny Dyer movie without Danny Dyer. And it just didn't work. And half the time I found it funny because the fact it was like the movie was so bad at times it was good. Because they were saying stupid Cockney terms that just made you crack up with laughter. And it made no sense. It was like, there's a nice little bit, and I say this all the time because this monologue always sticks out for me. The princess is having a duologue with the prince, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. She goes, "Oh, you Persians, you're disgusting, you're vile, and you always invade everybody." And then he stands there and goes, "Excuse me, princess," and then goes down the fucking toilet. It was terrible.
So basically, everybody sounds like Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, but a very bad impersonation of Bob Hoskins.
Love Bob Hoskins, but I you know what? I'm going to give it a chance because Disney, if there's one thing they do well, it's pulp action. I liked the Pirates of the Caribbean. I liked John Carter. I haven't seen Lone Ranger. I've heard that's terrible, though, but that was a mess from day one. So I don't know. I mean, was the action at least good?
The action sequences worked to some extent. I felt the story kind of lost itself because of the fact that there was kind of a huge lack of understanding of the source material. And that was the biggest thing. And I think with Ubisoft as a company, as a whole, they tended to not understand. I don't think it was them who understood. They kind of gave them the license and went, "Do what you will with it."
I mean, it's to be fair though, it's Disney. If Disney says, "Hey, we want to make a movie based on your stuff," I'd do it. If Disney offered to do something with this job for hire, you'd be stupid not to give them the rights. Like, here, go ahead. No, you're Disney. You Mickey Mouse and all that other stuff. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you guys know best. You guys making the Star Wars movies. Travis, do you have anything you want to add to the Prince of Persia dialogue that we're having?
Well, first of all, you forgot one element about the Prince of Persia movie. It was EastEnders mixed in with some parkour.
Yeah, a lot of parkour. Because at one point, this is the funny thing as well, the director didn't know what he wanted. At first, Jake Gyllenhaal was bulked up to a huge extent. I mean, to the point where he was like Incredible Hulk-like huge.
Yeah, I remember seeing some of those early pictures.
And it looked atrocious. I was sitting there going, what the hell? So you understood that he never knew what the character was about. I don't think the director or the film company knew what they were doing because it was outsourced. And I think Disney were sort of quick to just went, oh, it's there, let's just leave it at that.
Mm. And also Richard Coyle. I'm a fan of his because of Coupling. That was a good TV series, but we're getting off topic here. Prince of Persia. I also like the trilogy, and I found the one, I forgot the name of the one where it got all like cartoony with the cell shading. I thought that was kind of stupid.
That was the reboot. That was the reboot. Yeah, that was the modern day reboot.
And I think it had like rock music as the background music.
You know what? I've heard good things about the game, but I think really the biggest problem was the fact that they slapped the Prince of Persia title on it. I think if they just left the franchise alone and released that as its own game, I don't think it would have been as reviled as it was by Prince of Persia fans. Like I said, the franchise itself just couldn't really transfer well into the next generation, and I think maybe the next generation after that, maybe it might if Ubisoft really decides to, bring their A game into it, but for now I think the franchise is pretty much dead. And by the way, if anybody's just curious, the Prince of Persia movie is right now sitting at a 35 out of 100 on Rotten Tomatoes. Here's the description. It doesn't offer much in the way of substance, but Prince of Persia is a suitable, entertaining swashbuckler, and a substantial improvement over most video game adaptations.
I got paid to say that. Now, this is what really pisses me off in terms of journalism. You can tell that half these guys have been paid to say something really stupid. It bugs me to no end when they do stuff like that. The movie was atrocious, and everything I've stated above is the reason why it was atrocious. It was funny, but it was atrocious. If you look at it as a Prince of Persia movie, you would basically be clawing your fucking eyes out wondering what the hell was going on. If you look at it as a comedy, you probably might actually appreciate it a lot more. In terms of video game movies, I can name about probably 10 to 15 different movies that were much better than this movie.
Super Mario Brothers is better than Prince of Persia.
I agree.
We've had conversations about how good Super Mario Brothers is. I think I'm gonna review that for 90s Kid Presents. I'm gonna have to do something. I think that's definitely worth a 90s retrospective, the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah, I love the movie, and there are a lot of people who look back at it and don't look back at it fondly.
It's got its cult following now. I mean, it was panned back then, but it's one of those movies that you kind of appreciate now that the Super Mario franchise isn't as hot as it used to be. It's kind of the same thing with the Street Fighter movie.
Well, the only thing about the Street Fighter movie is we just laugh at it now because it is so bad. I mean, back then we kind of groaned about it, but now we're just laughing at it.
I will. 2 words will justify that movie. Raul Julia.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Have you? It was an of course snap.
Alright, let's move on to the next franchise. And to me, this franchise definitely did not make it into the next generation, and that's the Medal of Honor series. Medal of Honor pretty much dominated the first-person console market for a while now. There was a time where there was a lot of those Medal of Honor games, and they sold well. And they kind of ushered in this era of World War II shooters. You started to see a lot of companies come out with those. And then when the next generation came out, they just couldn't keep up with it. By the time Airborne came out in 2007, Call of Duty 2 and 3 had pretty much established themselves. And they came out in 2007. Unfortunately, another game came out in 2007 by the name of Call of Duty 4, which pretty much completely killed the World War II shooter as is for good. And even then, when the quote-unquote reboot came out in 2009, and then following that up with Warfighter, I mean, those pretty much were panned by critics, both of them. That's a franchise I don't see EA going back to. I think they pretty much they pretty much waved the white flag to Call of Duty. They've pretty much that's a franchise that's done.
Yeah, they went. So, they decided to do the Battlefront franchise instead, didn't they?
Yeah, that's actually true. A lot of their focus went over to the Battlefield series. Medal of Honor just kind of got swept under the rug. But Travis, your thoughts on Medal of Honor? Do you think it's a franchise that's dead?
I don't think so. I still think that if they do it right and kind of move it beyond this whole World War II thing, which I think they've done some games back, they could actually reintroduce it and make it just as good as it used to be.
They tried to. We just mentioned that. They tried with the Medal of Honor reboot from 2009 and then Warfighter, and both of those games were pretty much panned by critics. I mean, no one liked those. And to be fair, I'm going to mention this when we get into a certain other franchise, but I think the Michael Bay shooters, as I'm going to call them, I think are starting to lose their luster, but we'll get into that when we get into franchises that just need to die. Just die, you know.
Agreed.
Anything else you guys want to bring up before we go on? Because there's not much we can really say about this. I mean, the games weren't terrible. Like, it was just a franchise that just couldn't make it into the next generation. They waited too long, in my opinion.
I agree, totally.
Absolutely.
All right, and next up on our list is the Crash Bandicoot series.
Oh, geez, I wish Dace was here for this.
I know. I should have said that. Like, this is for you, Dace. This is a franchise that pretty much was the cornerstone of the PlayStation. I mean, Crash Bandicoot was, for the longest time, what Mario was to the Nintendo franchise, was what Sonic was to the Sega franchise. Crash Bandicoot, for the longest time, was that. And then when the PS2 came out, they tried. Unfortunately, by then, Naughty Dog had pretty much signed over the Crash Bandicoot rights over to Vivendi and Traveler's Tales, and they were off working on Jak and Daxter, which is kind of another series that hasn't really moved into the next generation, surprisingly enough. But they tried with Wrath of Cortex, which was actually the first game I ever owned for the PS2. Not a bad game, but it definitely didn't feel like a Naughty Dog game. It felt like somebody trying to do a Naughty Dog game. You know, it felt like it was very much going through the motions. And since then, they've done Twin Sanity, they did Crash of the Titans. I haven't heard that those are... Wait, I said Twin Sanity, Crash of the Titans, yeah. I haven't heard those games are terrible, but the franchise, just from where it was, really just has not been up to snuff in terms where it is now.
Did they have another character in Twin Sanity? They had Spyro, wasn't it? It was Crash and Spyro?
No, it was Dr. Neo Cortex.
Yeah, it was Cortex. You're half right, because Vivendi did buy up the Spyro license, and they did do one crossover game on the Game Boy, but they never did a console crossover, which I'm surprised. I think that would have been a great game to have gotten, like, 5 years before that, but like I said, I mean, the franchise, even going to the PS2, it pretty much lost a lot of its luster, and by this point, I mean, it's almost reached nostalgic levels. I mean, you really don't hear much in terms of Crash really making an impact on the modern consoles. You very much hear it on the level of, oh man, I used to play Crash Bandicoot all the time back in '97. You know, it's one of those things. Do you think the franchise is just obsolete? It's just gotten to the point where it just does not have a place anymore?
I don't think so. I mean, that's it. I was thinking about that right when you mentioned Crash Bandicoot. I think it's the right time to bring him back because, for one thing, the fans are still there, and of course, I'm still wanting a new Crash Bandicoot game because I'm a big fan of that character. And well, you were mentioning Twin Sanity. Excuse me. It's not a terrible game. It's just not a fun game. I mean, that was the one game where you needed both the thumbsticks in order to control both characters. It just felt too convoluted, I think. But as a series, Crash Bandicoot, I think it deserves a major comeback. And there's been rumors going around. There's even been like not a production still, but kind of like a teaser photo. But you know, they just need to bring him back, and what better way than bring him back for the new generation of consoles?
Burhan, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, in a sense, it's one of those franchises that I wouldn't mind seeing again because it is very nostalgic. But I don't believe it's had its day. I think it was just one of those things. Once Naughty Dog took it, washed its hands of it, it kind of lost everything that made it what it was because of Vivendi. No offense, I think they have a tendency to gain properties and not know what to do with them.
Well, I can't really say that because I was actually going to put Spyro also kind of in the same boat, but the Skylanders series is pretty much a revived Spyro. I mean, that pretty much put them back on the map in terms of
yeah, but he's no longer a primary character now, is he?
No.
He's one of the characters of the series. That's pretty much it,
Yeah. It's more of a situation where you could have slapped anybody's name. Like, it could have been Crash Bandicoot Skylanders, and it would have been kind of the same thing. In fact, I'm surprised Vivendi hasn't stretched the Skylanders franchise into Crash Bandicoot. If they still own it, if they haven't completely signed it over to Traveler's Tales, maybe stretch that over there. I wouldn't be adverse to that.
I would literally add him into that game as well. I don't understand why they haven't done that as of yet.
Well, if you're listening, Vivendi, or somebody related to Vivendi, why don't you put that into Why don't you put that into place and call in too? We can use somebody within the business to call in. Travis, you want to end this real quick before we move on?
I just want another Crash Bandicoot game, plain and simple.
And as always, guys, if you want to basically comment on this or anything else that we've talked about, if you want to basically tease us as well by coming onto the show, just make sure you have some good core material because, you don't really want to hear you guys make crappy jokes that you have no understanding of. Apart from that, you can give us a call on 760-512-7247, that's 760-512-7247, or you can contact us using the Skype button. And remember, guys, if you have any questions, you can also tweet us at iGotGameplay, or leaving a message on the iGotGameplay Facebook page, facebook.com/iGotGameplay. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to basically hear what your opinion is on these franchises. Do you believe that we're right? Do you believe that we're wrong? Or do you feel that you're somewhere in the middle ground? Let us know.
Well, I've got one more game that I want to talk about in the franchises that couldn't move to the next generation. It's very appropriate, considering we devoted an entire episode to this character last week. Might be a little controversial, but I'm going to say it right now. I think Mega Man's a franchise that has not been able to make it out of the previous generations. I think X7 was probably its best chance to, and it flopped. And since then, it's very much been either a handheld series, in the case of the Zero franchise and the Battle Network series, and that's pretty much it. I mean, they came out with X8 back a couple of years ago. That didn't really get much in terms of people talking. 9 and 10 have gotten people talking, but that's more of a nostalgic boost. I think from a modern perspective, I think the Mega Man character is pretty much done. And I think Mighty Number 9 is proof because everybody that would have been a fan of Mega Man has moved over to that. That's the new big franchise, especially when we talked to Robman and he pointed out that Capcom really just doesn't have anything planned in terms of Mega Man. I think the franchise is done. I think it's met its maker.
I think that's not due to the franchise being stale. It's more to do with the fact that Capcom was mismanaging it. That's
true.
The biggest issue here. The Mega Man franchise always had something unique. The X series kind of gave it a nice little shot in the arm, but it always managed to deliver in terms of story, in terms of structure, and also in terms of development of your character. You always got some new prizes. You managed to push your character forward to that next level. The main issue here is how Capcom have treated it, and at the moment they've treated Mega Man like the big bastard red-headed stepchild of the Capcom universe, which he isn't. In my opinion, Mega Man is synonymous with what makes Capcom great, but the problem is that Capcom's not great anymore.
It's because there's no more Mega Man games that they're coming out with.
Not just that, it's just they don't know what they're doing anymore. It's like they're lost in the sense of their own success.
Travis, I mean, do you think that there's still a chance that Mega Man could make a splash in the modern console field? I'm not talking about just some little quickie downloadable game. I mean, a full-length game that people can get excited over, kind of the same way Mighty Number 9 has. You know, like I said, you know, Mighty Number 9 is kind of turning into the game that Mega Man should have turned into, or a Mega Man game should be, but hasn't been.
But I want to say this, don't get it twisted on a sense that Mighty Number 9 should have been the Mega Man game. People are excited for Mighty Number 9. They are. But if the name on the character was Mega Man, they would have actually received it just as much as they've received the Mighty Number 9 franchise. I think the fact that they know that this, in a sense, is the unofficial successor, what makes it even more important.
I think that with the Mega Man, I totally agree that Capcom has crapped on Mega Man, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And the only thing we're going to see for Mega Man coming out here in the near future is as a licensed character in the latest Smash Brothers game. That's it. And apart from that, I mean, I think Mega Man deserves another chance, but at this point, since Capcom really doesn't know what they're going to do with this character, we are going to have to experience the spiritual successor of Mighty Number 9. And it seems kind of cliche to say, but this is pretty much as close as we're going to get to a new Mega Man game, and I can't wait to play it. And that being said, Mega Man, since Capcom doesn't know what to do with this character, I guess we can say that franchise is toast.
I disagree. I think the franchise will eventually rise again. May not be under the Capcom banner, though. As I've pointed out before, if Capcom continues to go on the steady decline that they have done, I doubt we'll actually see any more games coming from them.
I agree.
And as a company, they may just outsource, or they may end up just getting bought out entirely.
Oh yeah, I mean, I really should retract my statement. I really shouldn't say Mega Man is toast. That was just my mouth running. But no, that's a good point. Mega Man, I mean, if Capcom does go under, and just by looking at their latest public financial thing going on with like $152 million in the bank right now, if they do go under, I would like to see some company at least swoop up the Mega Man franchise and, I don't know, have a reboot, as it were. Just something to say, hey, you guys miss Mega Man. We are the ones who own this franchise now. We've worked hard on it. Here you go. I would love to see that. But time will tell.
All right, and we move on to another topic, which is franchises with new developers. This is another facet where usually a franchise, it doesn't so much die because of irrelevance or it's just a bad franchise. Usually the case is a franchise will get into a new developer's hands, and the developers just don't know how to continue with what they're doing. There's nothing against doing anything wrong, it's just the direction they take the franchise in just doesn't work. And I think a huge example of this is the Silent Hill series. First 3 games were made by Team Silent. That was Konami's Japanese development team. 4 and up have been made by Konami's American branch, and you can tell that it's being made by an American branch. I've always subscribed to the theory that Japanese people just have a better sense of horror than American audiences. They just do. I mean, you look at the Japanese versions of a lot of the American remakes of Japanese movies, and it's night and day. They just know how to build up a sense of suspense. They know how to build up a sense of disturbedness. You know, they just know how to play with people's minds. And the first 3 Silent Hill games very much reflected that. Now, I liked 4. I thought 4 was an interesting deviation. I thought the concept of the first-person apartment complex was very interesting. It had a sense of claustrophobia to it. So if that was mainly the American developers, I'd give them credit. Everything else after that, Downpour, Homecoming, I think there might be one more, I don't remember. Those have just been action-tinged horror. Basically, basically rip-offs of the Resident Evil formula, the current Resident Evil formula, and nowhere near as scary as the original ones. I think it's a matter of just the American developers just don't have a handle on what made the series scary.
Well, I'll go into this a little bit, and again, I don't believe it's the Americans per se. I believe it's the developers that had their hands in this, and I'll explain why. Twin Perfect, if you guys checked out the YouTube channel, these guys had a huge history with the Silent Hill franchise, especially when it came to the Silent Hill movies and also the Silent Hill HD collection and Downpour, etc. And the biggest issue was that the American company, and I'm just trying to figure out what the guy's name was that dealt with it. If you guys basically know, just leave me a tweet or leave a message.
Climax?
It's Climax Studios, I believe, but I'm trying to figure out who the guy was behind it, because he had a very nonchalant quote and went, "The Silent Hill franchise is in good hands." He stated that the franchise was in good hands and that you wouldn't get a bigger Silent Hill fan than him. And what did he do to the franchise? Well, he ended up trying to create his own variations of the game, which ended up with a Silent Hill, I believe it was the new Silent Hill game that they did, and Downpour, and they used, it was Homecoming, where they used Pyramid Head for some weird reason when he had no association with anybody in that game.
Yeah, let me just, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to go on a tangent because this is something that really irritates me. When they brought in Pyramid Head into the movies, which I don't know, have much of an opinion on in terms of that. I don't know how Pyramid Head became the mascot for the series. What people need to understand is Pyramid Head only makes sense to Silent Hill 2.
Yes.
The character of Pyramid Head and what he represents only fits in with the main character of Silent Hill 2. Yet for some reason he's become the mascot to the point where he pops up in the game you've mentioned, Homecoming.
Yeah.
Which
and in a sense it's like his creation as well, and it makes no freaking sense because Pyramid Head is Pyramid Head. You know, it makes there's no reason or rhyme why Pyramid Head is there. And that's the biggest issue here. The character in general has no merit when he's placed in a different scenario. Now, in Downpour, they brought out a different character, and they went, "Oh, we're not going to be doing Pyramid Head this time. We promised that the character's been put to bed." It was a different appearance. The main antagonist that they had in here, the guy in the suit and mask, but it was Pyramid Head. By all intents and purposes, the character was still using the same mechanics as Pyramid Head.
They had the same thing in Silent Hill Origins, the PSP version. In fact, I think that was the first game they made before Downpour, and I agree, it very much felt like a best of all the Silent Hill games. I mean, you didn't have Pyramid Head, but you had a character that was basically Pyramid Head. He had a white smock, he had like a faceplate mask, and he carried around a big butcher's knife. It was Pyramid Head.
Yeah,
it was a different shaped Pyramid Head. Exactly,
and the problem was that developers behind it had no idea what they were doing. The main, as I said, if you guys know his name, I'm too kind of wrapped up into my Grand Theft Auto game to actually sit down and do the research for Twin Perfect site to give you the guy's name, but when he tried to do that, he then tried to introduce the HD collection, which they use beta code. You know, for mostly what you guys who don't know, they usually do a beta code of a game before they release the initial game itself. And what they did, they took the raw code for the game, placed it onto a different unit, tried to upscale it a little bit, took away a lot of what made the game work, and he wanted to get new voice actors because it turns out that Konami Japan never had an actual agreement with the voice actors that they used in the first place. And these guys wanted to get, they're like, well, if you're going to use us again, because you've used us for the games and the special edition games and the collector's editions, we weren't paid for that. We were paid once, and it was a handshake agreement. There was no official contract. So they decided to cast new actors and, instead of reaching out to the old guys and get a new agreement, and everyone got really pissed off, especially in terms of Silent Hill 2. And it went downhill from there. They didn't understand what they were doing. It was like they took the franchise, they kind of understood it, and like, oh, we'll just do what the Japanese did. And then they copied and pasted and copied and pasted and copied and pasted to the point where the same story over and over was being told again and again and again, to the point where Silent Hill even disconnected itself from the original material, becoming a place where people dealt with their problems. That's pretty much what Downpour was. It was like it wouldn't allow you to get out of there unless you resolved your issues. And there was no, it was like the Twilight Zone.
Travis, you got anything you want to add to this?
I've only played the first 2 Silent Hill games, but to be honest, I did see the reviews for Silent Hill 4, The Room. Nice title, by the way. You're tearing me apart, Lisa. Okay, I had to get that out of the way. Sorry. Sad joke.
This show's just making fun of me. I'm fed up with this world.
I'm fed up with this world. I did not hit, I swear. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Burhan, you need to get some room quotes on the soundboard.
Yes. I did not hit her.
No, you need the "you're tearing me apart." That has to be on.
You're tearing me apart. I actually got one. I used one of those quotes actually for a movie file episode, so I will put that on there.
So, anyways, sorry about that. But anyway, continuing. I've always believed in the motto: if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I can see why possibly it switched to American hands, because I'm sure the original team wanted to do other projects, which is fine.
Yeah, I believe what happened was Team Silent started making the game, and then they moved it over to American developers, because what happened was Silent Hill 4 was actually supposed to be its own game, and then Konami said, no, we're making this the 4th Silent Hill game, and I think there was some issue with it, and then they took it away from them and moved it over to American developers. I think it was just a situation where Team Silent wanted to move on from the franchise, and Konami said no. So they just kind of got rid of them.
But they kind of handed the project over to a new team, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's why 4, I think, still holds some connection in terms of it doesn't feel too much distant from the Silent Hill games. But once you get into Origins and all the other ones, you can tell that this is being made by a company that just doesn't have the sense of what is scary, because I don't think from what I've heard, they're not badly played games. They're just not scary. They just don't have that level of intrigue and just that sense of disturbed creepiness that the first 3 games had. And like I said, it goes back to Japanese sensibilities versus American sensibilities.
But it's also basically developers not listening to fans again, and this is the main issue here. And to be perfect, they touched on it a hell of a lot with these games. And they talked about the fact that games were being released broken. And, it looked like they were half-assed in half these games. And they even purchased, 3 copies of the HD collection so they could review it and prove to people why they shouldn't buy this game. And it was a constant failure by Climax Studios to no end. To the fact that they didn't understand, and again, I will say it, they didn't understand the franchise. And the problem was, the reason why it died a horrible death was, they kind of allowed it to keep going again and again and again and again, to the point where the story had already been told. From 1 to 3, that was the story, and that was it. There didn't need to be any new stories. Because there was only 3 individuals who it was encompassed Silent Hill. But then it just kept going on and on and on and on, and it got to the point where it became a shell of its former self.
Could it be fair to say that any future Silent Hill games, or anything after 4 specifically, would be considered a bit painful to watch and play because of that fact?
Well, the movies as well were just terrible, and it comes to the point where the initial essence of the game, if they could find a way to tie the universe into a good story, or tie all these loose ends together, it would make sense, but they don't. They just use Silent Hill as a name and just, like, throw random situations into it that don't belong there.
Fair enough.
Well, speaking of just not understanding a franchise, I think this leads right into the next franchise, which I hesitate to say that this franchise is dead, but I'm going to say it's dying, mainly because it lost its figurehead, and that's the Ninja Gaiden series.
Yeah.
The first 2 Ninja Gaiden series were really good. I mean, I played Ninja Gaiden Sigma. I had to give it up, though, because I just couldn't beat it. It was just that hard. But this is a game that was ultra difficult, ultra violent. It was sexually indulgent. It was basically an exploitation game. It was an exploitation movie that you could play, and it was awesome. And then Team Ninja and Itagaki left Tecmo on pretty bad terms. They went off to do, I believe it's called Grasshopper Entertainment, is their development team. And the Ninja Gaiden series stayed with Tecmo, and their in-house developers did Ninja Gaiden 3. And from what I've heard, a lot of what made the first 2 games fun was pretty much stripped out of Ninja Gaiden. Not just that, not just the sense that it doesn't have the boobs and a lot of the graphic kills that it did. Itagaki had a great sense for control. I mean, if you play the Dead or Alive series, looking past the sexual nature of it, they're very well made fighting games. Incredibly well made. Like I said it in my review of Dead or Alive 2 for the Dreamcast. I was shocked at just how good that game is. And it's been the case for a while. Now, I don't know has there been a Dead or Alive game since Itagaki left? I believe 5.
Beach volleyball as well, didn't they? They had another one on that going on.
Yeah, we're not going to talk too much about that one, but
yeah,
I believe was 5. I know they're up to 5 now. Was 5 done before or after Itagaki left?
I think it was after.
After. I haven't heard much about it. I mean, it might be good or whatever, but Ninja Gaiden really is the series that really got hurt the most, because I've heard that the game just does not have the smoothness of the original ones. And like I said, the franchise just hasn't been the same since Itagaki left. That was his baby. I mean, you could tell that this was a game that he pretty much put his heart and soul into, and then you look at 3 and it just feels nothing like 1 and 2. Maybe Grasshopper Entertainment can work back with Tecmo, but as a franchise, do you think the Ninja Gaiden series is dead?
Not on the whole. I think there's always going to be Ninja Gaiden games coming out. But if this is the case where the main developer is not with the company, we're just going to, if they do release future titles, I think we're going to expect them to be kind of like 3.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, like I said, as goofy and over the top as 1 and 2 were, I thought they were really well made. They were very well made, and Itagaki just knows how to do indulgence. Like, yeah, the games are very tongue in cheek, but he knows how to pull it off right. You know, he knows his audience basically.
No, I agree. In a sense, I think the game series kind of saw the last of itself on the Vita.
I haven't played the Vita version.
It's okay. It's not amazing.
Well, isn't it just a port of Ninja Gaiden, the original one?
Yes.
Which they've already ported from the Xbox to the PS3 and now to the Vita?
Yes.
I mean, it's just basically just taking the same game and bringing it over to a new thing, which I hope that's not the case from now on, where they just keep rebooting 1 and 2 over again. Honestly, if they wanted to reboot the series, maybe that's the best for them. If it's not Itagaki's Ninja Gaiden, then make it somebody else's Ninja Gaiden. You know, if that's going to be the case. Yeah. If you got to make it your own, as long as it's good, I'm okay with that. But I think the Ninja Gaiden series, as we know it, is pretty much done. I mean, it would be like somebody coming in to try to make a Mega Man game. You know, it would be like somebody trying to recopy Inafune's work.
The thing is, they can do, and they were in the process of making a Mega Man game that was different. Problem was, though, they kind of got the wrong end of the stick in terms of what they wanted to do. And Capcom were just refusing outright to do anything with the game. Now, in a sense with this, and any game that you have out there, everyone can make it their own. You know, I remember people were sitting there and shitting on the Green Lantern series, coining comics here, before Jeff Jones took the reins. And now everyone talks about how amazing the series is. So, you can't sit there and say, oh, it's this person's series, or this person should be doing this, because it doesn't work that way. You know, there are a million people that have their hands on work. You just got to make it your own instead of trying to make it what the other person's done.
I agree. Travis, you got anything you want to add to this?
I think, Burhan, you actually took the words right out of my mouth. That was exactly what I was going to say. And I'll tell you the truth, though. My Ninja Gaiden games will have noise will be the NES games, because, I mean, that's where it started, and those games were, I mean, as hard as they were, and as challenging as they were, I still had a blast. But yeah, just, you know, I don't know, I have to agree. I think Ninja Gaiden at this point is gone. It's history. Bye-bye.
Well, we'll talk about franchises that have been able to reboot themselves in a little bit, but I've got one more franchise that I want to talk about, and I'm going to mention it and talk a little bit about it, but to be honest, I'm really not the biggest fan of this series. But I know that there's a lot of people who are having problems with the direction the series has taken as of late, and that's the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah.
Specifically since Final Fantasy 12, because if I recall, 12 was when they brought it over to new developers. If I'm not mistaken, they used the developers that did the old Tactics series, and they're the ones that have been taking over since then. And 12 had its fans, but I know a lot of people who hated 12. I respect 12 because they actually tried to make a walking mechanic, like an actual battle movement mechanic to it, which I've been wanting to see in a Final Fantasy game for a while. But I mean, if you want to hear about the problems people have with 13, go watch Noah Antweiler's video. Go watch Spoonie's video, and just the way he picks apart all the problems with Final Fantasy 13. Now, to be fair though, to get a better understanding on why the series is different, find Mars Girl's video on Final Fantasy 13. She does the same thing, but she picks it apart in a positive way. To me, the series is just, I don't know. I don't know what to really say other than a new developer's taken it over and made it into something of their own. Whether or not that's a success or not is up to the fans. Do you guys, I don't know if you guys have played the games yet, do you guys consider this a franchise that is either dead or dying?
I don't think it's really dead or dying. It's a lot different than as it was when it started out, that's for sure. And there's been games in the series that were flipping awesome. I mean, 7. I mean, you can all agree that Final Fantasy 7 was one of the best ones. But there's also been some that were just like, and left us scratching our heads. You know, this franchise is far from dying, although it's drastically changed.
And there's also that huge obsession that one of the lead guys on the whole Lightning Returns thing about making her have big boobs and making her more girly because he's in love with her because she's collabed with a vagina. In that sense, I think the Final Fantasy games went segue when they started doing sequels. Like, you know, Final Fantasy 13 2 and Final Fantasy 12 2 and
10 2. 12 never got a sequel.
10 2 and stuff like that. And it got to the point where they were just oversaturating it, trying to push as much as they could out the franchises just by making as much noise as they possibly could.
Well, we're going into Final Fantasy 15 now with the newest one, so we'll see if that pulls the franchise out. But it's teetering. I'll say in terms of the fans, because I've heard a lot more negative than positive about the most recent Final Fantasy games.
Well, a lot of positivity at the moment is coming from Final Fantasy 14, or Realm Reborn. People are loving that game at the moment. I know people who hated the initial concept of the game now who are loyal followers of it. So
what is the initial concept? Because I've only recently heard about it. I don't follow Final Fantasy news as much.
It's an open world MMO Final Fantasy game, basically.
Like 11? 11 was open world.
Pretty much like that, but they have new concepts, new characters. There's this huge war that went on before where a mage sacrificed his life in order to bring balance, but now there's like a new thing coming to destroy their realm, so that they need to band together these warriors and in hopes of trying to put things right, so to speak. So I believe as well they've all been sent back in time to before this war happened, so they could be more prepared for it. It looks good, the story's there, but depending on what happens, I don't know what else is going to be going on with the game. It looks good, it seems good. I haven't played it myself because I'm not a fan of paying for a game and then paying a subscription rate to play it.
Alright,
but apart from that, as I said, that in my mind, I like to put everything together in the same universe, and I can't do that with Final Fantasy games. And that's why I always hold 7 in a place of my heart, because I love that game so much. I hated Final Fantasy 12.
Alright, fair enough. We've got other categories that I can go into, but I'm noticing we only have 15 minutes left, so we'll go into those in the overtime segments.
Cool.
We're going to go into the main event and talk about the big ones, the franchises that have pretty much hit their stride, and in my opinion, from a fan perspective, just need to call it quits. And I can't think of a franchise that has pretty much hit that stride harder than the Metal Gear series. I think Metal Gear Solid has pretty much... I'm going to say it right now. I think 4 should have been the end. I think 4 was a great way to tie up all the loose ends, well, as much as you could with such a convoluted storyline. I think 4 was a great way to go out, and really 4 was probably one of the best that they could have done. I think 5 is pretty much double dipping. I think it's pretty much ruining the ending of 4. I know it's supposed to be a prequel. It's supposed to take place there in between one of the other games, but I've always thought that in the case of a lot of prequels, if it wasn't important enough to mention in the previous games, or in the previous bits of canon, it just wasn't worth mentioning. And I think having it be a prequel is a bit of a cop out. I mean, to me, when you can't even get David Hayter to come back and reprise his role as Solid Snake, that's a sign that the series has gone on way too long. So I know it's controversial, but I think Metal Gear Solid is a franchise that just needs to end, and I think 4 should have been that end for it. Travis, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I can see your point of view. And by the way, the Metal Gear Solid 5 actually takes place between Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker and the very first Metal Gear game. Just so everybody knows that. But anyways, God, this is a really tough one because I love the Metal Gear Solid games. And 4, I mean, definitely, that is the height of the series right there because, like you just said, it ties up pretty much everything in this very bizarre story. And my gosh, this is a tough one.
I understand what your problem is because as a fan, you kind of want to see it continue just because you might enjoy the next iteration, but at the same time, you want that sense of closure. You know, and 4 was very much a sense of closure.
It was, and I'm always going to love the stories. I'm always going to love the characters. And I'm going to be honest, this is the very first game series where I had a strong connection, not just with the characters, but the people who voiced them. And yeah, I was one of those sites that was pretty bummed out that David Hayter was told not to come back for this new iteration, and they got Kiefer Sutherland to play Snake. That's really out of left field. I never expected that.
I don't know if this guy's actually Solid Snake, though. He looks different.
Well, that's the thing, because he's one of the clones, apparently. The story has not really been finalized and explained to the fans, but apparently he might be one of the clones, or this could have been after. I don't know, but I don't know that he's going to be Kiefer Sutherland is going to be playing Snake, and I just don't think he can. God, I really don't know. I mean, I wanted to just wait until the game comes up before I pass judgment on it, but I really think like you just said, Miguel, 4 really should have been it. And that there's really no more they could have done with the series except for going back and saying, oh, but this happened in Snake's life. Okay, that's kind of stupid at this point.
And it muddies up what is already a pretty muddy backstory for the franchise. I mean, it's just by the time 2 came around, the franchise was pretty much looped in on itself, but from then on, the series has pretty much just kind of been just a dead zone in terms of continuity. And for what 4 was able to tie up to add more loops to that, I think is an insult to the fans. I think to just make it that much more difficult to follow, I think is very much an insult, and it really does to me feel like a cash out. You know, 4 was pretty much sold on it being the final chapter, and for Konami to come back and for Kojima to dip into that franchise again, I think it just proves to me that you're just there to make money. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a great game, but it's a cash grab.
It's one of those things where I believe this is going to be a start of a new franchise.
But it's continuing the continuity of the original.
Yeah.
Not only that, that's going to undone all the loose ends. It's going to add more to it to make it even more confusing.
Yeah, I mean, finish the story.
No, I agree with you, but on the same level, they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it so they can spin it off, so you can still play with Snake and do everything that you could do previously, but you know, but you can do it all on next gen. It's more open world, blah 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 blah. I'm going to reserve my judgment until I see it. And I believe this is probably the result of, because they were going to do a Metal Gear Online at one point. I believe this is going to be the closest thing that anybody who wanted to play Metal Gear Online will be able to actually pick up and play. So it's a good thing. We'll see how it works out. Maybe it may lead to a bigger and more appealing story. Who knows?
Well, Speaking of stories not finishing, I can think of one big franchise that kind of nipped itself in the butt with its continuation of its story, and that's the Mass Effect series.
Oh God!
That was a series that pretty much said we're making 3 games. It's going to be a self-contained story, and the way you play it is going to affect your 100% different ending. And that was the plan. BioWare went into it making it a 3-part series that was going to end. And then EA basically came in and said, you're not ending this franchise. This franchise is making too much money. Change the ending. And they did. The fans, revolted. And I don't want to say that the franchise is dead, because I do think people are that addicted to it that they will buy the DLC, but that's a franchise that needed to die. It was supposed to have ended. That's it. Mass Effect 3, done. No DLC, no nothing.
But it was supposed to be more organic, wasn't it? They were supposed to basically allow everything that you did from the first game was supposed to affect the progression of the second game, and the second, the third.
Yeah, right. But because they didn't want to craft it so that it would have a definitive ending, they gave this very generic, kind of open ending that everybody got, so that they can do DLC after the fact. They can continue the story.
Yeah. And that's the biggest issue here. Again, it's part of EA just wanting money and not listening to their fans. I'm not going to go too much into it. I a lot of people, it kind of redeemed itself with the Fem Shep character. I've never played it. I have no intention of playing it. I'm not a fan of the Mass Effect franchise because ever since they were talking about this game, I knew they kind of talked a big game in a sense, and they were promising stuff that it was never going to happen.
They pulled the Peter Molyneux, basically.
Yes.
Travis, you got anything you want to rant about Mass Effect?
I can't really rant about it or make a comment about it because I've never played any of the Mass Effect games. That doesn't mean I don't want to. I know that have they released the trilogy, all 3 games on the PS3 yet or anything?
I don't believe so. I don't know if there's plans to do that. It wouldn't surprise me if it did. Mass Effect 1, I believe Mass Effect 1 is downloadable on the PS3 by a PSN. I'm not too sure, though. Don't quote me on that.
Okay. Yeah, because I really want to play these games. I just haven't gotten to them yet, and I really want to. From what I've heard, that they're really good and a very passionate fan base, as you just mentioned, especially with the ending to the 3rd game. I mean, I didn't hear about the ending, and I don't want to hear about it because I want to play it, obviously. Yeah. But, yeah, this is definitely something I really want to experience. And if they can make all 3 of those games available for the PlayStation 3, I'm in. I'm sold. I want to play them.
Well, it's not a situation where I think the franchise should die because of quality. I think it needed to die because that's what they promised. You know, they promised 3 games that it was going to tie up. I mean, if they wanted to do another trilogy, fine.
No. Don't do that, because they did that with Halo, and I don't want to see that.
Wait, we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
We're gonna get to that. Let's dovetail off of what Travis said and move on to the next big franchise. And by the way, we've got 4 minutes left, so folks, if you want to continue on, we're going to be going into overtime. We're going to bring up a bunch of other big franchises, and we're going to also talk about franchises that are dead and franchises that have been able to pull themselves out of the dead. So stick around in about 4 minutes. We're going to be going into overtime, but we're going to finish off this tail end by ranting about the Halo series.
And just so you know, guys, if you want to still call in, you can do on 760-512-7247 or by clicking on the Skype button. We're into 3 more minutes before we go on to our archived show, so make sure that you check that out. And for all those people who are listening now, who want to transition onto the archived show, it will be updating after the next hour.
And just real quick before we touch about Halo, I did look at it. Yes, the Mass Effect trilogy is available for the PS3.
Good. That's good.
Now,
all right, so let's talk about the Halo franchise. I mean, the first 3 games were specifically the 3rd game was basically. I remember when this game came out and it was everywhere, and the big tagline that people were saying was, "Finish the fight." This was going to be the final game in the Halo series. Even with that ending, which kind of opened up the door, it was done. It was pretty much done. They blew up the Halo, didn't they? They destroyed the Halo. The Covenant was disbanded. It's been a while since I've played the games, but I know that it was a definitive ending for the most part. And I'll give them credit. When they went into ODST and Reach, I was okay with it. I wasn't the biggest fan of the concept, but I was more open to it because I think, especially in the case of Reach, they really opened up on an interesting concept, which is the ensemble cast. I think, honestly, if Halo 4 had gone that route of more of like the world after Halo 3 through the eyes of several other characters, like almost like a Magnolia kind of thing, where you're playing multiple storylines through the eyes of other characters, like what Reach did, I think that could have worked. But they're going back to Master Chief. They're digging the Chief up for another 3 games, and it's like, why?
Well,
I know you
dead.
In the original ending, yes, but if you stick around and look at the extended ending, spoiler alert, there's a scene where Master Chief sneaks into a pod like he did in the first game, and refreezes himself. I was talking to the Blog Talk girl. He refreezes himself, and that's how the game actually ends. And in 4 and up, they unfreeze him again, and shenanigans ensue. Why?
Sounds like he should end up putting a bullet in his own head, because it seems like he's the problem.
Yeah, it's like, look, why re-dig up the Chief? I mean, you could have still used the Halo name. I mean, obviously you did that with ODST, you did that with Reach. You could have continued the series on and freshened up the gameplay more. You know, you could have focused on new characters and brought new emotions to it. Instead, you just went back to the Chief. And the Chief had his time. He had his storyline. End it. You know, I think this is a case of, this is another case where you had such a definitive ending with 3, and now you're double dipping with 4 through 6. It's kind of frustrating, you know. Burhan, we'll start with you this time.
I'm not a huge Halo fan. I do like the franchise. I purchased my copies of the game, but that's also because of the fact I'm not a huge FPS fan. The story, though, initially, when I was going through the stories, I enjoyed it. But I agree, they kind of left it open-ended and was like, oh, okay, you know, let's go with this way and let's do it the way that we want to do it. And it kind of killed every bit of heat that the franchise had. Now they're continuing it and continuing it and continuing it and continuing it. All I have to say is the company that's taken over, what's their name again?
343 Games,
343 Studios. The woman who keeps going on stage and speaking, she's kind of hot. If she basically wants to call me, 760-512-7247 or sex chat.
Stop that,
Get a booty
Burhan.
call on the show.
I'm in charge of tonight's show. You will not whore yourself out on my show.
I got booty.
Yeah.
The spin-off of I Got Gameplay.
Yeah, stick around after I Got Gameplay for a special.
Yeah, a special Mike Burhan sex voice call. You know, most people do sex tapes. I'm so cool that I'll do a sex voice call with the female person behind 343 Studios. And I've forgotten what your name is. Don't worry, we can go through semantics.
It's not like it's going to matter. He's not going to call you the next day.
No, I never do.
Travis, your thoughts on Halo as a franchise? Is it a franchise that you think should have called it quits after 3?
I totally, because after 3, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with everybody. I've only played the first one. I've had it on the Xbox and on Mac. I did finish it. I thought it was great, but I didn't get around to playing 2 or 3. But from what I heard, 3 actually tied it up, and I thought it was kind of silly that they decided that they want to make a new trilogy of games. And, I mean, 343 Games, I'm assuming that's an in-house Microsoft studio, am I correct?
Yeah, Bungie is doing their own thing now.
Right. They're not
They-
an in-house Microsoft studio. They're the guys who've taken over the franchise. I believe they're third party. I don't believe they're first party, but I may be wrong.
Okay. Well, regardless, Bungie was a company that, of course, made the franchise and made a really good storyline, and I can't really see any other studio trying to pick up the ball and make something new from it. But I think after 3, it really should have stopped. And now they're coming out with, there's a teaser announcement for a 5th game that was made at this past E3.
And a TV series.
And I think even a TV series. They're really trying to milk this thing dry, aren't they? I mean, there's really no point of carrying on it, I think. But they're going to, because there's a strong fan base, and they're going to eat it up like it's a dish of ice cream.
And see, here's the thing. I'm okay with the Halo TV series because, like I said, the universe that they've got is interesting.
Yeah,
like I said, if 4 had gone the ensemble route or picked up with a new cast of characters, I would have been totally for it. I'd have been like, all right, you're expanding the universe. Because I think the Halo universe is worth expanding. But the fact that they're going back to the Chief is what annoys me. I think the Chief had his day. The Chief, was the hero in the first 3. He got his storyline. Now you move on to somebody else, whether it's a new Chief or if it's a new cast of characters like they did with Reach. just move on to something else. I think the series just needed to do that, and the fact that they're going back to the same main character is completely pointless, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
All right. Speaking of main characters that I think pretty much needed to stop after its third game, I love this game to death. I got it as a gift for my birthday about a year or two ago. I've loved the series before that, but I think the God of War series needs to end. If you've played 3, you know exactly what I'm talking about when you say that series tied up so beautifully. I mean, that ending was just awesome. Have any of you guys played God of War 3?
I've played the first 2 God of War games and both PSP games. I've not played the third one, though.
Oh, play the third one. It's worth it, man. It's really good. And the ending just, it ties up everything. Spoiler alert. So, Travis, if you don't want to hear it,
just give me like some sort of a cue on Skype to let me know I can come back in. I'm going to close my ears.
Okay. All right. Spoiler alert. He basically kills all the gods, just all of them, and it basically he ends the reign of the gods and gives man the choice to. He basically kills the entire Greek religion, basically, which I think is really impressive. Let me just tell Travis to come back. Oh, hold on, I typed that into WordPad, never mind. I have my notes up, so I've got the notes up and I've got the Skype chat. But, are you back?
I'm here.
Alright, so yeah. So it ended like that. And then they came out with God of War 4 and God of War Ascension. Now, I believe Ascension is actually a prequel. It's a prequel, and I don't know if 4... I think 4 might actually be a sequel, but that's just another example of a game tying up its loose ends so well and just going back in for seconds. You know, especially since Ascension and 4, from what I've heard, really don't offer much in the way of anything new. I mean, yeah, the graphics are shinier slightly, but it's just more of the same, and I think that's more annoying than anything else, because at least in Halo 4, they could bring in some of the new gameplay features that they brought from ODST and Reach over to the franchise, to the main franchise. With God of War Ascension and 4, it's just more of the same. It's the same gameplay, it's the same fighting mechanics, the same platforming. It's just cranking out another game. And I don't know if Eat, Sleep, and Play made these two, or if Sony had somebody else to do it, but to me, with the way the third one ended, I have no interest in playing the next two, the Ascension or Part 4. You guys have thoughts?
Well, since I kind of skipped the part about what you guys were talking about, God of War 3, if it ties up as all the loose ends like you've mentioned, then I probably would have to agree that the franchise just needs to just die. I mean, that's that. You can't really do anything else.
Burhan?
For me, I've basically never played the franchise. I have a copy of the HD collection, which I want to go through. But in a sense, the fact that it wrapped everything up, I don't see any point in continuing it.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm noticing with a lot of these franchises, especially the ones we're going to get into next. A lot of times it's a case of the developers want to end the franchise, and then the producers are just like, no, your game, this made too much money, you're making a sequel. I can't. There's nothing else that needs to be said. Here's a dump truck full of money, make it happen. It's kind of like, to use a TV example, are any of you guys a fan of Babylon 5?
No. Never watched it.
Burhan?
Yes, I did watch it, and kind of reminded me of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Actually, they both came out around the same time, and it's just coincidence that they both happen to... There's a whole controversy over that, but the main writer, J. Michael Straczynski, when he wrote Babylon 5, he wrote it for 5 seasons. He mapped out all 5 seasons out, point to point. This is where we're going to be at this point. This is where we're going to be at the other point. When Season 3 ended, the ratings were going down because the way Straczynski works is he does very slow builds. So the pacing for a lot of the previous seasons is very slow. When season 4 came out, they told Paramount told them, "You've only got one season to work with. We're cutting you down to 4 seasons." So he condensed seasons 4 and 5 into one big season, which made the pacing go up, which brought audiences back. So when 4 ended and all the storylines were tied up, ratings were huge, and Paramount said, "We're greenlighting you for a 5th season." And he's like, I can't do that. I've already tied up everything. You told me I only had one season left, so I put everything in there. And it's like, well, rewrite something, figure it out. So the final season is a lot of people say that it's a very meandering season. There's really no real story to it. It just kind of just goes on. It's kind of the case with a lot of these games. It's like, they're clearly written to be a very condensed story, and these developers and these producers just keep shoving more money to them, and what we get is just zombified versions of the games that we originally love. It's unfortunate. Speaking of which, Gears of War. Let's go into that one. That one had the same. That one was kind of fell into the same boat of the Halo series. 3 games, all tied up very well, and now you've got this 4th game coming out, Gears of War Judgment, which supposedly is a prequel starring one of the side characters, one of the weaker characters, to be quite honest with you. And I don't know. The big thing about it is that Cliff Bleszinski is not even a part of Epic anymore. He left, and he was the big lead developer for these games. I mean, I don't know. I can't say if the franchise is dying because the game hasn't come out yet, but do you think they're on dangerous ground at this point?
Yes. Absolutely. There is no question about that. Gears of War, those 3 games, it's like you said, all the storylines have been, tied up in a nice bow, as it were. And
as Homer Simpson put it, in a nice, neat little package.
There you go. And there's just no reason to. This is what bothers me about people making prequels to series. I mean, this goes back to Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars started out as a beloved trilogy, and now they figured, well, let's get a backstory going on. Let's make some prequels.
Yeah, but that's not behind it. That's not studios.
And to be fair, Lucas had always wanted to make the prequels. He had the story set up. It's not a good story, but he had the story already written out before then. He just didn't think the technology was up to snuff.
It's a shame we didn't have the actors there to help tell the story.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I'll defend episode 1. I have my reasons. I won't go into them. That's a whole episode unto its own right.
He lost his virginity to that episode.
Okay. Mwah. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
No, yeah, that's a good point. But anyways, I was getting a little sidetracked. I just can't see why they want to make another series of Gears of War games that goes as a set of prequels. I mean, come on, guys, really? I mean, no reason why they make more and more of these games like Gears of War, God of War, I'm not going to talk about Halo. The people who created this universe, they always set it up just to be like a trilogy of games. And even though they have it all tied up, and it's like with Babylon 5, that was it. There's no more of the story. But the business doesn't care about the story. They just want to make money. So they say, well, yeah, you did. However, we want you to do more of this so that way we can have more money. Because the fans will buy anything. And that's a given. Yeah. So, and then because of that, the series starts to falter. It starts losing that characteristic, that special thing that made it so wonderful.
It's like, who do you blame in this situation? Do you blame the fans for continually buying the franchise until it's been milked dry, or do you blame the producers for wanting more money? Like, I can't really blame the producers too much because they made an investment and they see there's money to be made, and you can't really stop them in that regard. But if fans really didn't want the series to continue, they would basically just say, no, we don't want to. And we're going to actually talk about that later with some franchises that did in fact die in a little bit, but it's unfortunate, I will give the developers credit. It does take a lot for a developer nowadays to make a self-contained franchise, because they could just go the route of like a Friday the 13th and just keep cranking out sequels with no end in sight. At least in these cases, they have a plan.
Absolutely.
Burhan, you have anything you want to say about Gears of War?
Not really. I hated the game.
All right, so let's move on to the next big franchise, and that would be Resident Evil.
Yeah.
You know what? It's weird. I love the original Resident Evil series. That was one of the first survival horror games I played. In fact, Code Veronica was the first. No, Dino Crisis was actually the first survival horror game I played, but Resident Evil Code Veronica was the second. And I've been a fan of the series ever since. I played 2. I picked up the director's cut of 1 on the PSN. I love this series. And 4, I think, probably was the best of the new generation, because it still had that sense of mood and dread. It was very much a slower paced Resident Evil than its sequel. You know, it controlled better, but it still felt like it was within the same ilk of the Resident Evil games. When 5 came out, that was very much just an action horror game. That was an action movie with horror tinges. You know, it was just not scary. It was clunky, to be quite honest with you. I don't think the control scheme really was suited too well to that. 6, from what I've heard, I haven't played it because I have no interest after 5. 6, I've heard, is pretty much more of the same. I played the Revelations demo, and it seems to kind of go back to more of a more claustrophobic, slower tone. But do you think at this point it's too late? Do you think the franchise...
No, the franchise can be saved. I just think they need to realise what they want out of the franchise, and that's the problem with Capcom. They don't know what they want to do. In a sense, again, it's about keeping the franchise unique. And the problem from going to survival horror to an action game is it's no longer unique. It's the same shit that everybody else is producing. And what made Resident Evil unique is that whole survival horror aspect. The whole, them versus the zombies kind of thing, and not knowing what the outbreak was. But with the story itself, 5 rounded the story off. With the death of Albert Wesker, that was it. It was ended. But then, nope, they brought it back, and they added a son in there, and yeah.
Oh, they went the son route for 6?
Yeah, and the son's now like a good guy who's helping them find the cure and stuff like that.
Oh, geez, now that really is jumping the shark now, isn't it?
I played it on a Let's Play for Nerd Genius, and then I gave up on it. Because without playing with somebody else, it got boring.
That's another problem with it, is the fact that they tried to make it more action-based with stuff like the multiplayer. And yeah, Outbreak did multiplayer, but... I
would have loved to see an Outbreak series, though. That's for me. I would have loved to have seen an Outbreak series, kind of like Left 4 Dead, where the characters involved, everybody would have been, had their own sort of story to tell, and you can watch these characters develop as you play on. Using the basic Resident Evil guys and just making it a shooter-based Resident Evil franchise, it's no longer Resident Evil. It's basically Call of Duty, Resident Evil Ops.
We'll get into that in a second, actually. But Travis, you got anything you want to add to this?
I just can't stand the way Resident Evil's gone, the direction it's gone right now. And I think the only reason why it's gotten to this point is the series just seemed to change with the times. Because now we're getting to the point where people just want to just have shorter attention spans or something. They just want to get right into the action. They don't want to use any of that classic puzzle solving that made the series the staple that it was. And I actually played Revelations, not all the way through, but I played some of it, and I'm glad that kind of shifted its gears back to where Resident Evil started. But at the same time, I really hope that at some point they just reboot the whole franchise and just bring it back to its roots. I mentioned that on a previous episode of the show.
I don't think rebooting it would be the answer. I think just keeping the name and going into a different part of the franchise, like as I said, basically going with, instead of Resident Evil doing the Outbreak series as a franchise, I would love that.
I just want them to totally abandon this whole action thing and go back to having been classic survival horror with wonderful, smart puzzle elements.
By the way, for those of you guys listening into the show, want to know any progress about Grand Theft Auto Online, it's working after the update patch. It takes ages to get back into the game because you have to keep resetting and going back in. But I'm in, and I'm now doing the tutorial mode, which I'm quite happy with.
Yay!
Well, they've thought about taking the series in a different direction. Did any of you guys see the original concept video for Resident Evil 4 when they decided they wanted to take the franchise down a more supernatural route?
Yeah, I would have loved that. I would have really loved to have taken a look at it. But again, I think the characters that they have, the existing characters, a lot of it is due to the fact that there's too much fanfare going on with Leon Kennedy and Chris Redfield.
I just thought of something right when you mentioned about what Resident Evil 4 was going to be at one point. Do you guys think they could actually make Resident Evil into some sort of like an anthology series where it's, you know, a different setting with different characters, but yet they have to face these types of traumatic perils, like, you know, things coming after them? What do you think?
I think Silent Hill is doing that right now, to be quite honest with you.
No, but the problem with Silent Hill is it lost everything of what made Silent Hill great, because it became an Elseworld kind of story instead of... Silent Hill was only, as I said, it was only encompassed around 3 people. And when they took that away, and they killed the demon god that was responsible for the whole thing, they kind of lost everything that made the story what it was, you know.
Yeah.
Look at Pyramid Head as the lead character. That was just like... I'm not really going to go into that. But the thing with Resident Evil was, as soon as Wesker died, that should have been the end of the story. With 6, now rounding everything up, that should be the end of the story. But the problem is it's not going to be. There's going to be a 7. There eventually will be.
I wouldn't mind seeing a spin-off of the Resident Evil series. Maybe keep the name, but just change it. Change it into more of a supernatural type of thing.
I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
I think the name still could sell, but I think and we'll talk about that later on when we talk about franchises that pulled themselves out from the deep, but I think the name still has some heat going to it. I think, like I said, it depends on what Capcom wants to do with it. It's funny how that phrase keeps coming up. Well, it's whatever Capcom wants to do with the series.
Well, that's true, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with Capcom.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop with you, Miguel. It doesn't stop with me. It doesn't stop with Travis. It stops with Capcom, and that's the main thing here. If people keep buying the games, Capcom will keep making them.
I still have this feeling that some company we're not thinking of is going to end up buying them. You know, it's going to be like, wow, SNK actually did buy Capcom.
You know what? I would say it could even be, for instance, just trying to think here.
I don't think it's going to be an American.
Could be Warner Games.
No, I don't think it's going to be an American developer. I think they're going to try to keep it within its country.
You know what? If I was a Nintendo, if I was on a Nintendo and Capcom went up for sale, I wouldn't care how much they would ask him for. I would buy them. If I was someone at Nintendo.
I don't know. Maybe the Mega Man franchise, but then again, I want the Mega Man franchise to go back to Inafune. Am I pronouncing that right, by the way?
Yeah. Inafune, yeah.
Inafune, yeah. I was worried there. But I'd love for the franchise to go back to him. In terms of the other franchises, like Street Fighter and Resident Evil, I don't know where Resident Evil would go. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe... who's the company that does Tekken?
Oh, that was Namco.
Namco
Bandai.
I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if Namco Bandai maybe picked up Capcom.
I doubt it.
They're not doing too bad. I mean, Bandai. I don't know how good Bandai is doing right now, but Namco's doing pretty solid. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think best case scenario is probably going to be just piecemeal. I think if Capcom goes under, you're going to see all these companies vying for the licenses. Like I said, I could see Street Fighter getting gobbled up by Namco Bandai. I could see Inafune getting back Mega Man. In terms of Resident Evil, I don't know who would pick that up.
It definitely wouldn't be Namco, because Namco mostly does like arcade type games. But
I was saying it could be Time Warner, because they're the ones who ended up buying out, Midway Games.
Midway was an American company, though.
Doesn't matter. They bought it necessarily for the Mortal Kombat franchise.
I could see Sega picking it up. Sega might pick up Resident Evil. They've dabbled into their own zombie games in the past.
Yeah, like House of the Dead, but it wouldn't. But that mind just got blown. That wouldn't be a bad idea. Let's just say if Sega did purchase or pick up the Resident Evil franchise, I bet they'd make a pretty cool first-person light gun shooter with that.
Didn't they try that though with Dead Aim and Survivor?
They did, but I'm saying just make something that's even better.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. I was just going to say because with the Resident Evil franchise, they did those Chronicle games for the Wii, and I think they recorded to the PS3 as well. But yeah, I definitely would say if Sega did pick up the franchise, I think they would make a pretty cool light gun game with that name.
Yeah, Sega has dabbled in zombie horror before. If there's one Japanese company that I think would pick up the Resident Evil series, I could see Sega picking that up. But like I said, I think Capcom's going to be piecemeal. I think they're going to just cherry pick whatever franchises they can, and whatever's left will be just sold off to the lowest bidder. But we've got one more franchise on the franchises that need to die list, and then we'll finish this up with a few other ones. And that's the Call of Duty series.
Yes. God, yes.
I think the biggest problem I have is that they're all the same. I think Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 hit on a great concept. It was very much, I mentioned it before, it's the Michael Bay shooter. It was very much lots of explosions, very simplified, and just, it very much was made for kind of the bro gamer almost. That's very much a bro gamer series. And it's just been the same thing for 2, for 3, I think they came out with a 4, right? Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4? Or is Ghost 4?
No, there was a Call of Duty 4.
There's a Call of Duty 4, but that's Modern Warfare.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's Call of Duty 1, 2, and 3, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which should be called Call of Duty 5 Modern Warfare 2. It's kind of like the Rambo series, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Call of Duty First Blood.
Yeah.
And Call of Duty Cobra, which is just like a different film that seemed like Rambo.
Fun fact, Cobra was actually written as the movie Beverly Hills Cop.
Nice.
Seriously?
Yeah, it was originally titled Beverly Hills Cop and was originally going to be that movie. But when they signed Eddie here's the thing, when they signed Eddie Murphy, the director decided they wanted to take it more in a comedic route, because he was at the time the biggest, comedy star ever. So Stallone took his script, went over to Canon, and they redid it as Cobra.
Best idea.
Yeah,
I think that was the best idea to do that, because in my opinion,
Cobra is one of those so bad it's good movies. Like if it pops up on TV and I've got nothing better to do, I'll keep it on. It's got its charm.
You know the funniest thing, I'm just sitting here on GTA Online after saying that it works. Guess what? I'm stuck on a loading screen.
No!
And every time I leave my pad there, it says that I'm going to be kicked for idling when I can't get into the game. We love you, Rockstar. But in terms of Cobra, I don't know, it's, for me and for the Call of Duty series, it does remind me of a Stallone movie because of the fact that it has no fucking sense. And it had them playing in a band and singing for some reason at one point. So yeah, that reminds me of Rhinestone. And then they had all these weird little stories going on. They kind of turned it from being something that could have been an ongoing series of stories to bullshit.
I think my biggest problem with the Call of Duty series is what it did for first-person shooters in general. For a good example of this, I watched a video of somebody who they took the original Doom game and they modded it to play out the way a Call of Duty game would play, and it's just so hilarious and sad to see just how much the game holds your hand. You know, it doesn't allow you to go off on your own path. It tells you what to shoot, when to shoot it. Everything is set up as an interactive cutscene, and it's a very dumbed down game that makes it seem like it's high octane because it just, you know, it throws all this action at you at once. But there's a difference between throwing stuff at you and doing it right. And I think Call of Duty is just such a dumbed down game. And I think it's done a lot of damage to first-person shooters in general. I think from that perspective, I think the series does need to die. Like I said, my biggest issue is just that all the games are the same, and Ghost is no exception. I've seen nothing about Ghost that impresses me.
Well, it has doggies that you could shoot, and buildings that explode.
All of them have that, Burhan. All of them.
Yay!
Travis, you got anything you want to add?
I am just so goddamn sick and tired of these fucking Call of Duty games. There's nothing new about them apart from the maps. I'm just fucking tired of yearly releases of this game. It's just to the point where it's being saturated. I'm surprised people, each and every game that comes out keeps selling, and each one seems to outsell each other. And this fathoms me, because I look at these games, and there's nothing new. It's the same fucking game.
But that's the problem.
It's kind of like Call of Duty 4, Battlefield 3, Spec Ops: The Line. They just all kind of bleed into each other.
Yeah.
I know someone would say to me, it's like, well, Travis, you play the Super Mario Brothers games. I don't see anything new or exciting.
That's also kind of true. The princess keeps getting kidnapped. It's like, come on, bitch.
But
seriously.
At the same time, Nintendo keeps, in a way, trying to reinvent the game series itself. Yes, I understand, like, the new Super Mario Brothers games are all the same in their own respect, because that itself is its own contained series.
Yeah, because it's nostalgic. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to redevelop the nostalgicness of what the NES series was, and bring out the new localized, more like multiplayer audience.
Although I will agree, I think that's a franchise that is not so much dead or dying, but it's starting to look a little bit ill. Like it's a little green around the gills. I think it needs to kind of slow down a little bit. The whole new Super Mario Brothers franchise.
Well, now they're doing the Mario 3D Land franchise, aren't they? So.
Yeah, which I think is kind of silly, but that's another subject for another time. But back to Call of Duty. Jesus fucking Christ, can we slow it down a little bit? Yearly releases of the same shit. It's just, like I said before, it's the same game with a new coat of paint. And if that's all you can offer me, then I don't want to play it.
What they could do to freshen it up is do a self-contained story going from game to game to game. So each story is being told. You have each scenario happening as a way to sort of bring about what these characters are doing. You know, you follow one character, you keep playing, and it's consistent.
I say if they want to French it up the series, go futuristic. Jump to the future. I mean, give us space lasers. You know, we've done the World War II thing. We've done the modern shooter. Go forward 2,000 years. You know, have us flying around in like Raptors or you know, give us some X-wing type ships. You know, give us some giant space lasers. You know, have us fighting giant four-eyed tentacle monsters. You know, just give us something new to shoot. You know, and to shoot with.
I think they should just add Super Princess Peach to it and call it Call of Duty Princess Bitch. What do you think?
You know, this gave me an idea. What if they actually made another one of those Mario games, but like in a flipped reality? Think about that.
Wouldn't it be Super Mario Brothers the movie, the game?
Or Super Princess Peach, the trip to New York.
Nintendo, if you're listening to this, I would look into that. That might be something kind of different.
I'm still waiting for my Luigi's Diner game.
I'm still waiting for the Mario Brothers porn.
Yeah. I want to see a Cooking Mama type game where Luigi has to run his own diner. If there's one character in the Mario universe that can run his own diner, it's Luigi. He's got the ghost busting job in Luigi's Mansion. Give him a diner. Give him something to do. Mario was a doctor.
I'm waiting for safe sex with Mario. That'd be extremely hilarious.
But the only thing about that is just if they're going to do that, I just hope they don't turn into some silly puzzle game like what Yoshi's Cookie. Remember that game? I mean, that was it was okay, but I just don't want to make turn into like a puzzle game.
It's like Cooking Mama, where it's basically the cooking simulator. That's what it would be.
Pedophile.
Jesus Christ. Okay, well that was I got gameplay.
Yeah. Yeah, let's move on because I think that was the last one in the big franchises that need to die. Let's move on to 3 franchises that I think have pulled themselves out of obscurity, that I think were on the verge of dying and pretty much have reinvented themselves. And I think if you're going to talk about that, you got to talk about the Tomb Raider series. That was a franchise that everybody thought was dead by 2002. I mean, 3. 3 was when Angel of Darkness came out, but that was a franchise that burned itself out bad by the time Angel of Darkness came out, and everybody was willing to sign it out as dead. And then Tomb Raider Legend comes out. New developer picks it up. Games picked it up from... No, it was Crystal Dynamics picked it up from Core, and they completely reinvented the series for the better. I love Legend. I think it's a phenomenal game. I have it for the PS2. Then they did Anniversary and Underworld, and I wouldn't say the franchise was dead, but it wasn't keeping up with the modern games of the time. They rebooted it again, and they have the newest Tomb Raider game. It's amazing that this is a franchise that is almost 20 years old. I mean, the original game came out in 1996. So in 2 years, it's going to be 20 years old, and it's still pretty relevant as a franchise. It's been able to reinvent itself. You guys' thoughts?
In a sense, yeah, I agree with you. They've managed to reinvent the character. It had some controversy surrounding it as well, with the whole, Lara Croft basically nearly getting raped and then, stabbing the guy in the dick. Apart from that, I see huge potential. Hopefully we'll see more from it. It's more of a realistic, gritty approach.
I think the best thing about Tomb Raider is that it switched hands, because was Core Development or Core Limited?
I'm going to say Core Software or Core Interactive. We'll just call them Core.
Okay, that makes sense. They did a good job when the series first started, but it just got dragged on to the point where they had Angel of Darkness come out for the PS2, and that was pretty much the kiss of death right there for the series at that time, because that game was in development for way too long. They spent too much time on it, and then when it finally came out, it was horse shit. And then Crystal Dynamics picked up the series and brought it back to the limelight, and made it better than it ever was. And now with this new game that came out, I mean, Lara Croft, we missed you. Welcome back. Great to see you again.
Yeah, who's the developer for this new one?
Square Enix are producing it, and I believe it's Eidos again.
Oh, okay.
And I believe they're actually integrated into Square Enix now.
Yes, they have.
Nice. All right, let's go on to another franchise that I think pulled itself out, and that was the Devil May Cry series. I'm a fan of the Devil May Cry series. I thought I liked 1 for what it was. It's a game I can go back to, but I thought 3 was really good too. 2 was a bit of a misstep, but I don't know who to blame on that regard. 4, however, it seemed like they tried to do more of the same, and it just didn't play out, especially when you consider at the time there were other slashers that were just doing that better. So a lot of people wrote out 4 and was just like, yeah, this is it, the franchise is over. Then Ninja Theory took over hot off the heels of Heavenly Sword, and they rebooted the franchise with DMC. And I'll say this right now, I love the reboot. I've played the demo of it. I think it's phenomenal, and I hope that the franchise continues from here. I don't know how well DMC is sold on the market, so I don't know if we are going to get a sequel, but this is a franchise that I think has really rejuvenated itself, and I really want to see more of it.
And I've only played like the first Devil May Cry game, and I loved it. I fell in love with that game. Sadly, I didn't play any other ones in the series, but I'm really glad to see that this franchise has risen from the grave, as it were, and from what I understand, this is like it was a prequel to the very first game, right?
Actually, it's a complete reboot. I think they rebooted
a complete reboot.
Yeah, they redid the character models and everything. It's a new storyline, but the same characters.
Awesome.
It's basically a different universe.
Yeah, it's an alternate universe. It's an alternate reality Devil May Cry game.
Interesting. Okay, that might be worth checking out then.
Yeah, and Ninja Theory, I think they really brought their A game with the fighting style on here. I mean, it's multi-weapon based, but the way they do it to where you can switch between the weapons, it's a lot more polished than it was in Heavenly Sword. I don't know if you played that, but I think that they did a great job with this game, and like I said, I really want to see them do a sequel. Burhan, you got anything you want to say?
I liked it, but again, it was kind of critically panned. Because a lot of people didn't expect it to be what it was supposed to be, and it kind of poked fun at the previous franchise, which people weren't very happy with.
That's too bad, because I really like that game, and I really do hope it gets a sequel. That's unfortunate.
We'll have to look at the amount of units, and if Capcom's actually bothered in releasing...
Oh, it's Capcom. Alright, never mind.
I forgot. If we remember, the franchise was actually spinned off from the Resident Evil franchise, because it was initially going to be Resident Evil 2, wasn't it? Was that?
No, it was actually going to be. It was going to be a spin-off. It was going to be a spin-off game within the Resident Evil series. It wasn't going to be. It wasn't going to be technically a sequel, because I think they had the same idea with the Onimusha series, and that became its own game as well.
What was the game that they did that became its own game in the Onimusha series?
Well, the Onimusha series became its own game, but I think Onimusha was a spin-off game from Resident Evil. I think they both had two different ideas with that, and it just went into different directions.
I love when stuff like that happens, though.
Yeah, that is good. And the last one on the list of franchises that have pulled themselves out, I'm gonna get a lot of heat for saying this, but I think this franchise started to really start to burn itself out, and that's the Pokemon series. I think after Ruby and Sapphire, I think a lot of the franchise was just doing the same game over and over again. I think in terms of evolution, I didn't see much evolution after that. I think it was just more of the same. And there was a period before the newest ones, X and Y, before they went 3D, to where I was like, can they keep it going? Can they keep making more Pokemon games without evolving the series as a whole? And surely enough, after seeing X and Y, I'm like, all right, this is the great direction. This is the direction they've been needing to go. Fully realized 3D. Hopefully they can finally give us a full-on 3D Pokemon game on the consoles, but I'm not going to hold my breath. But I think Pokemon is really starting to pull itself out and really be the powerhouse that it was in its heyday. Not that it wasn't already, but I think it was starting to rest on its laurels a bit.
Yeah, it was one of those franchises where it did kind of get stale, especially the fact that, they kind of ran out of character models as well at one point.
Well, I've always said that after a while it just became a bunch of just random shapes with eyes onto them. Like, they don't even look like actual creatures.
Yeah.
Like, at least the first 250 actually looked to an extent like something that would exist in real life. After a while, it was just like, no, that's just a bunch of balls with eyes attached to them. Literally, it's balls.
I remember there was a cartoon someone did with Pikachu, and he's like on acid. And the funny thing about it, he sits on this chair, and he's like, hey, I'm a Pokemon! 6th generation. And you just look at it and you think that pretty much is what they were doing. You know, they were doing hats and chairs and stuff with Pokemon eyes. But yeah, they've given it something more unique. They've considered it a lot more. They've taken a lot more time. But again, I think it's still that cash cow. You know, hopefully, the thing is they can mix the story up if they wanted to as well, but they tend not to, because the focus of the games are usually children.
I agree. I'm not going to completely go that route. I think Nintendo sees that there very much is a nostalgia factor when it comes to Pokemon. I think a lot of the people that still play it to this day are probably people that played it back in 1998. I think even Nintendo sees that. You know, it's not like a situation like Star Wars where it's a franchise geared towards children that just happens to have an adult fan base. This is very much, I think Nintendo even realizes, yeah, the diehards are, you know, in their 20s, which is, I don't know what that says about us, but I'm happy that they're finally evolving the series. I hope it goes more. I hope it goes more, much farther. You know, Travis, you got anything you want to add?
Not too much, because my only exposure to Pokemon series was Pokemon Blue, and of course the first couple series of the Pokemon animated cartoon. But apart from that, I do have to agree, because like a lot of the later games, some of those Pokemon just did not look very, very well inspired. They just looked, well, like I said, like shapes. It just didn't really do much to make me go out and want to play the games. But I'm glad that with the new ones coming out, let's see here. As of this recording, this comes out on Sunday the 6th. No, I'm sorry, the 12th. The 12th, sorry. I'm really glad to see that the game is great. The game is going to look friggin' awesome, because I've seen like clips of it. I've seen some still shots of the game itself, and it looks gorgeous. And the new Pokemon they're going to have in X and Y, man, I'm even excited at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, those were three franchises that, in my opinion, pulled themselves out of the muck and reestablished themselves. Let's take a look. Let's end this with four franchises that, in my opinion, have died. And I'm going to ask you guys if you think that they should, if its time has passed enough, and you think that they should come back, if they could come back.
All right.
And we're going to start off with a franchise that is dear to me, the Tony Hawk series. I think that franchise, it's very much a 90s franchise. It's you know, it's an extreme sports title. The only one that I could think of at the time. I mean, yeah, you've had some after that, but that pretty much was the king. I'd probably say in my heart 3 was probably the peak. Although I think from a tolerance perspective, I think Underground 2 is probably right where the series was tolerable. Right after that, I was not a fan of American Wasteland. I was not a fan of Project 8, and Proving Ground was just such a bloated mess that I didn't even bother. And then they went into the dreaded peripheral gameplay with that ride thing, and the franchise pretty much died. It was dead. People were like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And it's been dead for a while now, except for Tony Hawk HD, the re-release on the Xbox Live and PlayStation Network, which has actually been getting really good reviews. A lot of people love it. They love the fact that the franchise went back to its roots. I don't know what Activision's deal with Tony Hawk is right now, or if they have any plans to do it, but do you think, given time has passed and given the fact that their only other competition, the Skate franchise, has pretty much been dead, EA pretty much gave up on that, do you think it's time for the franchise to come back?
I think so, because skateboarding is still very relevant even to this point, because of course I'm a huge fan of Rob Dyrdek, and I like him. I think he's a really decent guy. He's a damn good skateboarder, and still very much a fan of Bam Margera and all those really cool all those other guys I've seen who've taken the sport into extraordinary heights, pardon the pun. I really would like to see a new entry in the Tony Hawk series. Just don't make it as what's the word I want to use? Yeah, loaded, like the later games in the franchise.
Yeah, Proving Ground, to me, tried to do way too much. I mean, they had that whole leveled, it was almost RPG-based, where it was like, you could be a guy that does tricks, or you can be a guy that tags, or you can be a guy that makes, the ramps and stuff to go around. You can do all this other stuff. It loaded the game up so much that it was a bloated mess. It was just like, I just want to go in there and just do some tricks like I did back in, the early 2000s.
Absolutely.
Burhan, you got anything you want to add?
Not really. I've never been a fan of the franchise.
All right. This next one is actually one that I'm surprised didn't continue. It looked like it was going to, and then Capcom gave up on it, and it is the Onimusha series. I played the third one, the one with Jean Reno in it, because I'm a fan of Jean Reno, so I wanted to see what that was like. I dug the game, and from Burhan, was it you that said that you thought it was a really good franchise?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good franchise, and that was one of the parts that I loved about it, because they took a risk. That there was no need to have him in there. And they took someone who was revered in the acting world and placed him in sort of to the gaming world, in a sense.
I do have to kind of wag my finger at Capcom for not having him actually dub himself. I think he did the French versions of him, but when they switched him over to America, it was clearly an American actor. I kind of have to wag my finger at that. I would have loved to have heard Jean Reno's actual voice.
Maybe it was a licensing issue.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite parts of that Godzilla reboot, the '98 one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
I'm probably one of the only guys that had no issue with the Godzilla reboot whatsoever.
My only issue with it is the fact that it's called Godzilla. Other than that, it's a B monster movie. I enjoyed it. I have it for Blu-ray. It's one of those movies that I can pop in and enjoy. I don't have a problem with it at all. It's just it has no business being called Godzilla. I don't even consider it the worst Godzilla movie. Not when you go into like the Son of Godzilla years. Those are dreadful.
Very true.
And thank God we didn't do that after the '98 Godzilla. Although technically they did that with a cartoon, but that doesn't count.
I'm still waiting for that sequel that the Godzilla movie promised. They were clearly sequel baiting, and it just didn't work.
We might have to wait a while because they're working on Independence Day 2, but again, that's another subject for another time.
Yeah, I can go into the whole backstory with the Godzilla movie because there's a lot of backstory, but with the Onimusha series, they had their trilogy, and then they tried to continue it with Dawn of Dreams. Dawn of Dreams, I've heard, is not a bad game at all, but for whatever reason, it just didn't catch on with the fans, and Capcom gave up on the series. It's been over 10 years. Do you think a series like that could continue? Do you think if Capcom wanted to, they can bring back the franchise even with a new set of characters? Do you think the Onimusha name has legs, basically?
Of course it has legs. The series always had legs. I don't understand why they cancelled it in the first place. Was it lack of sales, or was it just Capcom saying, no, you know what, we're done with this now?
I don't know. Dawn of Dreams was completely different. It was a different character, different story. I heard that it was a good game, but it just didn't catch on. I think it was that the fans just. It's the opposite effect of what we're seeing today, where the fans looked at this new game and was like, "Yeah, we're calling BS on this. We're not going to keep it going." I think maybe that was its issue, but I think nowadays with as far as the series has been from that last game, I think you can bring it back. I think the name still has legs, and you can even make a trilogy out of it if you give it to the right hands.
Or they could actually just have Jean Reno in it.
Yeah. It's too bad Game Republic isn't around anymore. The guys that made the oh god, what was that hack and slasher that launched for the PS3? I forget what it was. Let me look it up real quick. Game Republic. And I remember this company too. I forget what game that they made, but they made Genji, the Genji series. I actually really liked that game, and I honestly think it was better than Onimusha. It sucks that Genji 2 was such a flop when it debuted on the PS3, because I think if there's one company that could have brought the series back, it probably could have been them. I think they might still be. Oh no, they went defunct in 2011. Never mind. That's unfortunate. That would have been a great.
That's never going to happen.
Yeah, those guys would have been great to have continued the series. But I do think that's a series that could keep going. Let me check. Let's see. Oh, let me pull up my notes. Another franchise that I think I'd love to see continue is the Legacy of Kain series. I love the Legacy of Kain series. It's one of the first games that I played that was very much a story-driven game. You know, I started with Legacy of Kain 2, with Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, and that was very much an acting game. You know, it was very much driven on the performances of its characters.
I love the bait and switch in that game.
The bait and switch?
The bait and switch. How Kain was made out
about.
to be basically Kain was made out to be the villain. You know, even after having the previous games, he was made out to be the villain in the Soul Reaver games, and then it turns out he was literally a pawn in a bigger hierarchy.
Oh yeah. I haven't played that game in such a long time, but yeah, that like I said, that's a very acting-driven, story-driven series. I think that definitely has potential if given to the right company. I don't know if IDOS has any plans. They haven't had plans to do it since Defiance came out, and yeah, Defiance did kind of, I've heard, really tie up the series. But I think the name and the aura of Legacy of Kain could still come back. I mean, I hate to be one of those guys to kind of contradict myself by saying they need to bring this franchise back when it tied itself up. But I don't know. I have a fondness for the Legacy of Kain series. I don't know about you guys. I kind of would like to see it come back.
I really would like to just leave it at that, because it was so good. It was done so well. If they want to do a reboot and do a retelling, that's fine. But I just don't want to see it, elongate into about like 20 or 30 different games on the same damn franchise. It doesn't need to happen. It shouldn't happen. Just let it rest.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned about the Legacy of Kain games, because I actually still have a couple of them for the PS1, and I might actually turn those into Let's Plays here in the near future.
I have Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver for the Dreamcast. I haven't played it in about a year or so I might have to actually restart from the beginning, because I don't know if you guys can agree with me. That's one of those games where if you don't continue the story regularly, you're going to lose your place. Like,
yeah.
You're just going to be like, where am I? How far am I in the game? What do screw it, I'll just restart it.
One other thing I have to say, guys, the show's basically, we need to wrap up now, because we're literally we're killing sort of through overtime now.
Okay, yeah, that was pretty much it then. I wasn't going to go any further, but let's start with the plugs. Burhan, we'll start with you then.
Okay, great. As always, www.nerdgenius.com. The host of this, I Got Gameplay podcast, fanboysanonymous.com, Mega Powers Radio for all your Mega Powers needs, basically, including the Dace Man show every Tuesday. We've got a special edition Monday episode with Lara Plays Video Games. She's going to be on there. Also, check out Geek Speak every Wednesday. Every Tuesday, sorry. And also keeping Kayfabe every Thursday. And catch me on Smart Out Moment every Friday. And check out This Job for Hire, which is a series that has debuted on the Nerd Genius YouTube channel. Working with something with Flip at the moment to try and get it done. Check out our production company, Enigma Entertainment. So, anybody else?
Travis, you got anything you want to plug?
Yes. Let's see. Of course, I'm the host of the YouTube series Rose Colored Reviews. Last weekend, I launched the episode where I review Red Dwarf. And I'm working on a new episode that'll be out tomorrow, being Sunday, and it's going to be about the original Super Nintendo Star Fox game. And you can check that out at www.youtube.com/rosecoloredreviews. And you can also go to my Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/rosecoloredreviews. And I'm on Geek Speak Live, which, again, is on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central. And that's on MegaPowersRadio.com. If you want to get a hold of me, my Twitter handle is TravisGoss79, and shoot me an email at travis.goss@megapowersradio.com. Come check it out.
And I'll finish this off by just talking about 90s Kid Presents, which is my blog on fanboysanonymous.com. I am almost done with my first part of my top 16 greatest games of the late 90s. Just stick with me. I'll get it up.
As always, ladies and gentlemen, you can check out Miguel Leon on fanboysanonymous.com and his articles 90s Kid. He's also a writer for This Job for Hire. Episode 2 will be debuting this Sunday, the 30th. Around some time on YouTube, so make sure you stay clear and check out for that. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, tune into Mega Powers Radio for Otaku Nation Sunday at 8 PM with myself, Stephen Wago, and also a new guest that we're going to be having on the show, Mr. Jeremy Kahn. And if you're a big fan of Mega Powers, tune in to Geek Speak Live, as stated by Travis here. And also check out the Raw post show that we do at 11 PM every Monday. Sundays we have special pay-per-views. And also check out Keeping Kayfabe, where wrestling's still real to us, damn it. And that's pretty much it from me, guys. Stay tuned to Nerd Genius, youtube.com/TheNerdGenius, www.nerdgenius.com. And also remember, guys, that there is a ton of stuff that we've got going on here. Thank you for your support. And as always, we've got gameplay. Have you?